Chapter 1. Joyce rubbed her painful arm. The scene in front of her blurred into focus slowly. She had transmigrated. This was the manga her younger sister obsessed over, reading it more than 12 times. The sister needed to focus on high school entrance exams, so Joyce had confiscated the volumes, promising to return them later. She had flipped through the pages, mocking the king, the knight, and the princess. Now, she was inside that very world. She held the pitiful princess close, gripping her tight. In front of them, the handsome knight leveled his sharp sword at her. She recognized this moment. At the beginning of the story, Princess Isabella of Sedan grew up cherished by all. However, the king of Carnia coveted her. Rumors claimed the king of Carnia was an evil dragon who had ruled for 1,000 years. King Sedan could not bear to lose her, but the disarray forced upon his borders by Carnia left him no choice. He had to send his daughter to wed the dragon. Carnia was not like Sedan. The continent was vast, teeming with evil and mysterious forces. Arrogant black mages and vampires hid in the shadows, while the dragon ruled. To protect the princess from these threats, the dragon sent his commanding knights to escort her to Carnia for the marriage. They were currently navigating the first crisis of the journey. Villainous vampires had kidnapped the princess. They intended to use her to force the king of Carnia to release the seal on the first vampire, Kathy. The knight would eventually break into the vampire territory to rescue his charge. Joyce dismissed the plot. The hero rescuing the damsel in distress was a cliché, but at this moment, she was in the middle of it. The princess and the knight stood before her, but somehow, she had become the vampire villain who kidnapped the girl. When the reality of this nightmare refused to fade, the underlings behind her shifted. They seemed to notice her distraction. Your Highness Joyce, do not hesitate. Use her to threaten the king of Carnia. Make him return the whole continent to darkness. That is our world. Joyce blinked, returning to her senses. She looked back at her underlings, her expression complex. Is the primogenitor strong? The tall, deathly pale man behind her blinked in confusion. Of course. The primogenitor is the strongest vampire. Joyce did not loosen her grip on the princess. She looked at the vampires surrounding the knight. Then why was she sealed? He stood silent for a long moment, unable to answer. A sudden realization hit Joyce. She reviewed the plot in her mind. The vampires and the knight would clash over the great demon dragon's bride. Even if the knight rescued the princess, the demon dragon would surely destroy their lair. Furthermore, if the first vampire they mentioned escaped, she had already been sealed once. According to the tone of this otome manga, she would never survive past 3 chapters. This meant she was a minor villainous boss with a death sentence. If she did not die now, she would be dragged out and killed later. Go back and tell your king. If you want the princess to live, you will exchange her for the primogenitor. While Joyce scrambled for a way to survive past the next 2 episodes, her underling had already shouted the threat. Joyce rubbed her aching head. The knight was weak right now. Once they let him go to report the news, he would return to kill them all and save the princess. Could she avoid being such a stupid villain? The underlings watched Joyce, waiting for orders. They glanced at one another, uncertain of what to do. The situation felt like a trap. Joyce could find no viable exit. Her eyes fell, indecisively, on the knight surrounded by vampires. He looked cold, even for a young man. Whether this was reality or fiction, his features were stunning. He possessed the striking face common to male manga characters. He would eventually save the female lead. She caught a hint of sweetness in the air, drifting from him. They had kidnapped the princess and wiped out her guards. Dead bodies lay in chaotic piles. The scent of blood assaulted her nostrils, making her feel inexplicably hot. The other vampires showed the same reaction. Their eyes gleamed with excitement at the blood in the air. She glanced at the knight's neck. A trace of sweetness cut through the thick, bloody atmosphere. She looked at his face again. Even though she knew this sweetness was just her body's yearning for his blood, she found his appearance pleasing. It is a pity he is only a supporting character. Supporting character. Joyce's eyes lit up. She looked at the princess, who sobbed softly in her arms, then back at the icy knight. She raised a hand. I can let her go. The knight gripped his sword tighter. His eyes were wary and hostile. She looked at him closely. This supporting knight looked delicious. Joyce's lips curved upward. The thought settled in her mind. It was a good idea. You will come back with us instead of her. What? Before the knight could speak, the vampire behind Joyce whispered. Your Highness Joyce, you cannot let Princess Isabella go. She is the demon dragon's bride. We can only use her to exchange for the primogenitor. Joyce knew this primogenitor was the supreme belief of these low IQ vampires. She did not feel like debating his power level. She turned to the underling. The princess has not been married yet. She was kidnapped by such a large group of vampires. How do you know the great demon dragon will still want her? The vampires froze. Even the princess in her arms stopped crying and stiffened. But this knight of Carnia is a minion of the great demon dragon. He maintains the rule. If we only kidnap the knight, the demon dragon will trade the primogenitor for him to stabilize his rule. The vampire standing next to Joyce blinked. Really? Joyce looked at the villains. Their intelligence clearly did not reach the minimum threshold. She patted the underling on the shoulder. Trust me. She stopped talking and looked at the handsome knight again. She patted the princess on the shoulder. Give the declaration of war to the princess. Let her travel to the palace and deliver it to the demon dragon. If he wants to save his knight, he will need to make an exchange with us for the primogenitor. Yes. The vampires roared, their morale instantly boosted. Even though the vampire who always followed Joyce looked doubtful, he thought it over and tied up the knight. He handed the declaration intended for the knight to the princess. Take it to the king of Carnia. Tell him that if he still wants his knight's life, he will need to exchange him for the primogenitor. Princess Isabella looked at the knight who had accompanied her this entire time. He was silent, but he had placed himself in front of her during every danger. I will come back and save you. The knight's dull eyes glanced at her. He responded without thinking. Yes. Princess Isabella looked at the vampires. They eyed her like prey. She clenched the declaration and retreated step by step. After making sure they were letting her go, she turned and ran into the forest. Joyce waited until Isabella's figure disappeared among the forest shadows. She turned back to the knight. He was tied tightly at the wrists. The knight glanced at her subtly. He maintained a cold, antagonistic appearance. This chilly and stoic look was exactly Joyce's type. Joyce approached him. She became fixated on his exquisite features. She felt more and more satisfied. This kind of face can bring calamity to a country. It is such a waste that he is not the male lead. With this in mind, she lifted his chin, feeling delighted. Let us go home with sister. Sister will take good care of you. The knight raised his chin slightly to match her movement. He did not respond. Joyce felt wonderful. She looked at the man. What is your name? Your Majesty Joyce, it is time for us to go back. The vampire who always followed Joyce walked to the carriage. He opened the door and respectfully motioned for Joyce to enter. Joyce climbed in, rushing to drag the knight with her. Before stepping inside, she cast a questioning glance at the man next to the carriage. I said, Joyce frowned. What is your name? Nicholas. The vampire next to them raised his head proudly. Nicholas Long Aotean. Did this manga author randomly name the characters? The author had named the villain so casually that Joyce had to suppress a laugh. She climbed into the carriage after the knight. Your Highness Joyce, should these corpses still be the same as before? Long Aotean asked respectfully. Joyce hesitated. She did not know what before meant. Long Aotean's expression remained calm. She nodded, without thinking about his next actions. He received her order and closed the carriage door. The vampires outside rushed to the corpses. For a moment, the thick, bloody air hit her senses. Joyce realized what Long Aotean meant by the same as before. She had no time to stop him. She caught a glimpse of the knight sitting beside her. His face was dark. She hastily locked the carriage door. The corpses were soon cleaned, but the smell left Joyce in a trance. The carriage moved forward slowly. In the thick, bloody air, a faint sweetness drifted by. Her eyes fell on his neck again. She swallowed, her throat dry. This man's blood is really sweet. Joyce wanted to distract herself. Do you think your king will come to save you? The knight turned to look at her. His attractive eyebrows scrunched together slightly. It seemed as though he did not want to answer. It seems like he will not. Joyce nodded thoughtfully, speaking to herself. Do not worry. If he does not come to save you, you can stay peacefully. We are good too. Before Joyce could finish, she fell silent under the knight's frosty glare. After she stopped talking, the blood flowing under his thin skin appeared clearer. She was unaware of how she leaned toward him. The knight seemed aware of her approach. He turned his head, his cold eyes filled with guarded opposition. What is your name? Joyce kept her eyes fixed on his neck. She asked in a hoarse voice. The knight stared back at her. Joyce moved closer, fascinated. Just when she thought the knight would not answer, she heard his frosty voice. Sean. Oh, Sean. Joyce swallowed again. That is a good name. She did not know why, but something in Sean's blood attracted her. His blood was different from other people's. It was sweeter and more seductive than any delicacy she had ever sensed. The tip of her nose pressed against his neck. She inhaled the intoxicating sweetness. She was lost in the addiction. She opened her mouth and bit down on his neck. Chapter 2. A strange trance took hold of Joyce. As she approached him, the longing for that sweet taste grew. She saw the blood pulse under his skin with precision, like exquisite wine. Her instincts took over, and she bared her sharp fangs, leaning into the sweetness. Sean watched her. Just as her fangs hovered inches from his neck, Joyce pulled back. Realization struck, and she put distance between them. He stared at her, unblinking. Joyce held his gaze. Desiring his blood was one thing, but this reaction was different, even with the scent of blood clouding her mind. The strange attraction to the blood flowing through him remained. She turned her eyes to the knight again. He sat at the far end of the carriage. His hands were tied and he lacked his sword, yet he looked out the window with a stoic expression. He turned away from the window, and his cold, lifeless eyes locked onto hers. Joyce quickly withdrew her gaze. Fortunately, the carriage arrived at the vampire territory. Carnia had gone through a long period of change. It remained peaceful under the reign of the demon dragon. Yet a large number of aggressive vampires and black mages thrived. Vampires differed from black mages. They occupied the mountains along the coast, divided into their own territories. Only the original vampire seemed to have issues with the demon dragon. She remained hidden after the demon dragon sealed her away, her immortal body under constant threat. While the vampires faded from their former prosperity after the primogenitor left, they lived in seclusion to guard their last piece of land. They still dreamed of a great vampire revival. Joyce lacked ambition. She did not want to do anything meaningless after realizing she was a villain. Nothing good would come of it. She wanted to hide in a corner of this world and sleep like a salted fish. She needed a bed. The carriage stopped at the castle in the mountains. Joyce looked at the vast structure covered with roses, and her eyes lit up. This villain's castle was impressive. She felt in a good mood and turned to Long Aotean. Arrange the best room for our guest. Long Aotean looked reluctant, but he nodded under her gaze. After Long Aotean left with Sean, Joyce toured the castle alone. Dusk approached, and the orange sunset coated the castle in gold. The castle was beautiful. The thick curtains kept the sunlight from entering the rooms. Joyce, as a vampire, knew the vampires in this world did not fear the sun. She sat by the sea of roses and considered the plot. She had only read the first few chapters of the manga, but she understood the way otome stories developed. The villain kidnapped the princess, and the hero rescued her. Either the knight or the king would eliminate the villain. If the king, who was the male lead, rescued the princess, they would live happily ever after. If the knight rescued her, he would send her to the king to complete their romance. Joyce realized that Sean and she were both cannon fodder. Since the king and the princess would end up together regardless of the plot, she could stay out of it. She would kidnap the knight and live as a salted fish. She felt witty. She felt tired after sitting for a while, so she went to find her room. The other vampires guided her, but she froze when she reached it. Her room was a dark, damp basement with no windows. It was empty, save for a single coffin in the center. "Lord Joyce, are you going to rest?" Long Aotin's voice echoed. "That night has been set up in the best room after your room." She turned and stared at Long Aotin. He looked sulky. Joyce asked, "The best room you are talking about?" "It is probably not." Long Aotin pointed up. "Your Highness Joyce, your place is on the second floor of the basement. I have given him the finest place on the first floor of the basement." "What finest place?" "There is no need for that." Joyce hurried out of the room and went to the first floor. "Your Highness Joyce." Long Aotin followed her. Joyce pushed the iron door open. The room was damp and dark, yet she saw everything clearly. With one glance, she saw Sean tied up in a coffin. Joyce pressed her head, sensing a headache. "How can you let him sleep here?" Long Aotin frowned in displeasure. "I did not want to. This is where I usually sleep. It is one of our few double coffins, and I could not find a more spacious one." Joyce took a deep breath. "I meant to prepare a normal room for him. A room where a human can live, with a human bed and a soft sofa. We do not have a room like that. Go get one ready right now." Joyce watched Long Aotin, demanding it. She approached Sean and opened the closed coffin. She untied the rope on the cover and helped him sit up. She called for Long Aotin again. "Oh yes, in order to welcome our handsome knight. The room should have south-facing windows, and the walls should be pink. The bed needs to be big and soft too. I am sure he will like it." She watched Long Aotin leave. Then, she pulled Sean out of the coffin. She did not care if Sean was uncomfortable. When Long Aotin finished the room, she could use the excuse of guarding Sean to sleep in that room. With this plan, Joyce happily pulled Sean out of the basement. Long Aotin was a degraded cannon fodder villain with an unreasonable name, but his execution was fast. The strength and speed of vampires were brilliant. Joyce brought Sean into the room and inspected the simple space. She nodded, especially when she saw the big bed. "Great. Starting from today, I have decided to guard this place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to prevent the knight from escaping." "No, Your Highness Joyce, the great demon dragon's people are too cunning. You should be careful of him," Long Aotin said in horror. "It is because they are so cunning that I have to be by his side and watch him at all times," Joyce retorted. "This is my decision." Sean frowned slightly, but Joyce felt pleased as she looked at the young man. If she had simply asked to change her room, the vampires would be suspicious. Guarding Sean was a different matter. Joyce turned to the sofa in the corner. She felt overjoyed. When Long Aotin left, she would make the little knight sleep on the sofa, and she would take the big bed. She ecstatically approached the little knight. "What do you think? Do you like it?" Sean surveyed the room with the pink curtains, pink bed sheets, and pink pillows. There was even a pink sofa. His gaze returned to Joyce. Joyce avoided his gaze. "Okay, Long Aotin, you can withdraw." Before her wishes were fulfilled, Long Aotin had already sent someone to move her coffin. He said, "Your Highness, do not wrong yourself. I will watch him with you, and I will sleep on the sofa. You can just peacefully sleep in the coffin." Joyce stood speechless as Long Aotin pushed her toward the coffin. She struggled to sit up, clenching her teeth. She wanted to throw Long Aotin out. She looked up and saw Sean standing to one side. He looked down at her with an indifferent smile on his lips. For a moment, she felt as if she saw something in him. When she took a closer look, Sean had turned away. Joyce gritted her teeth and kicked Long Aotin out for trying to anticipate her needs. Joyce's world was finally peaceful. She kicked the obnoxious coffin aside and pointed to the sofa. "You will sleep there from now on." Sean did not argue and quietly sat on the sofa. Joyce stood near him and curiously observed the young man. "Aren't you afraid?" Sean raised his head and glanced at her apathetically. "Afraid? Yes." Joyce raised her chin, looking down at him. "This castle is full of vampires." Sean did not answer. Instead, he lifted his tied hands. "Perhaps you can untie me first." Joyce felt stumped. She waved her hand. "What do I do if I untie it, and you sneak attack me at night?" The young man raised his eyes. A pair of clear, indifferent eyes focused on her. "Sneak attack you?" Joyce averted her eyes, remembering how she could not resist the scent of his blood in the carriage. "Your sword is with Long Aotin." Joyce stumbled over the name, unable to stop her lips from pulling. When Sean did not move, Joyce walked up to him in frustration and untied the rope around his wrists. "What is so good about the palace? The great demon dragon is with the princess and your mission is done, so do not worry about going back." Sean watched the side of her face as he used the soft moonlight to study her. "Aren't you going to trade me for Kathy? How could the great demon dragon hand over the primogenitor for a night?" Joyce's lips twitched as she sized up the young man's thin figure. Look, you endured a lot of hardship with him, right? Which knight is not tall and mighty? Why are you so thin? She untied the rope. She looked at him as she spoke, but her eyes fixed on his white neck in the moonlight. His blood flowed under his thin skin like a life-saving oasis. It brewed a sweet water that disoriented desert travelers. Joyce struggled to swallow, her heartbeat accelerating as she involuntarily leaned closer to the delicious smell. Chapter 3. She opened her lips and moved the exposed sharp teeth closer to his neck. Joyce had skipped dinner, and her stomach remained empty. This extraordinarily sweet blood had gradually engulfed her reason, and now she only wanted to cut through the exquisite flesh to taste the sweetness hidden beneath the skin. Just as she was about to bite the neck of Sean, he put his hand out and pressed it against her forehead. Joyce froze. The sudden contact snapped her back to reality. She had lost control once again, because of the blood of this night. She searched for something to say to hide her embarrassment. Sean asked the question with a calm expression. You are unable to restrain your craving for blood. Is that not a low-level mistake made by newly transformed vampires? Joyce stiffened. The face that she felt was so handsome, to the point where it could make all humans, and gods resentful, suddenly became less appetizing. She distanced herself from him. Says who? I just have not eaten yet. There was an apple suddenly in front of me and everyone would take a bite. It is normal. The apple that was nearly bitten looked away with cold detachment. He did not lie down to rest, but quietly sat on the sofa. Joyce went back to sitting on the bed and stared at the motionless person sitting on the sofa. Sean sensed her staring. He withdrew his gaze from the window and stared into her eyes without any hesitation. Joyce did not expect him to look at her so calmly. She gave him a firm stare for a moment and refused to look away. They looked at each other in the room sprinkled with moonlight until two shallow rumbles interrupted the silence. Sean looked away deliberately. Little knight, I heard your stomach rumbling. Joyce spoke with surprise, though she remained unaware that it was her own belly rumbling merrily just moments ago. Sean ignored her. Joyce considered the situation for a moment, then smiled. I found some fruit trees around the castle a while ago. Let us go and pick fruits. Sean declined to comment. Upon hearing her words, he turned his eyes back to her again. Joyce did not care. She went to the window and pushed the old-fashioned window open. Her eyes widened with surprise. There it is. The people in the carriage and the people in the other rooms remained paralyzed. At this moment, in order to get some wild fruits outside of the ancient castle, Joyce looked around the room. She took the sheets on the bed and on the sofa where Sean sat and tied them together. What are you doing? Sean asked as he stood up when she started moving around. I am going to pick some fruit. She finished tying one side of the sheets to the foot of the bed. After repeatedly confirming the safety of the knots, she carefully threw the entire string of sheets down the window. She looked out of the window. Then, she looked back and gestured to the person behind her. You go first. Sean frowned as he looked at the long string of sheets and turned his eyes back to Joyce in doubt. Do what? Go down with this, Joyce replied. She took the string of sheets back up and gave the tied end to Sean. Take this and go down first. Sean looked at the tall grass under the window and then looked at her. Are you not afraid I will run away? Joyce appeared surprised. She thought that since she did not understand the strength of the vampires, she and the knight had to use the sheets to escape through the window. She had no idea what to do if the knight went down first and ran away. Then I will just catch you again and bring you back like a strong bandit leader's wife. She shrugged and smiled. She pushed him and motioned for him to move faster. If you run away, then they will probably try to catch the princess again. You might as well stay here for a few days. Sean took the sheet knot from her hand and silently jumped down from the window with the sheets. Joyce covered up the low cry that she almost blurted out. She looked down the window and saw Sean standing steadily on the grass under the window. She breathed a sigh of relief, pulled the sheets back, and fastened them around herself. She carefully stepped over the window frame, fidgeting with the sheets, and stepped down on the wall below her. After becoming a vampire, everything felt unreal and unfamiliar. However, the only advantage to becoming a vampire seemed to be that her strength and speed, and even her sense of sight and smell, increased significantly. Right now, it did not take a lot of effort to climb down the wall. As she thought of this, her hands grabbed the sheet with a bit of strength to continue going down. However, the sheet suddenly broke in her hands due to the excessive force. She shrieked as she began to fall straight down from her spot. On the grass under the window, Sean looked up at her falling from above. Ah, catch me! Joyce screamed and held out her hands to him. Sean watched the scene indifferently as she was about to fall into his arms and took a step back. Joyce took a heavy fall onto the grass. She looked up and stared at Sean. There are only 4 floors. Sean looked at her with puzzled eyes. Are vampires that stupid now? Joyce clenched her teeth and stood up. She furiously wiped away the dirt and grass. I just untied you. Do knights these days just want to watch people die and not save them? Sean appeared confused. At this height, a vampire will not die from it. Joyce ignored him and ran to the fruit trees outside of the castle wall, while no one noticed. The fruit trees were tall, and the trunk was strong and solid. Joyce worried about waking the paralyzed vampires and quietly climbed the tree. She sat down at the top of the tree and looked back at Sean, who stood at the bottom and had followed her. When she saw that Sean did not move, she held out her hand. I will pull you up. Sean looked up at her, but did not take her hand. Unlike you, I am kind, beautiful, and helpful. Joyce grinned and raised an eyebrow. Give me your hand. Sean silently observed the sparkles of delight on her face. After a while, he reached out and grabbed her hand. Joyce pulled Sean up to sit on the branch next to her. Then, she picked the fruits hanging all around her. The fruits were green. She chose the ones with a decent color and stuffed them to Sean. Afterwards, she picked one and happily took a bite of it. But as soon as Joyce had a mouthful, she suddenly froze. The unripe fruit had no taste and the juices inside were neither sweet nor sour. It only felt like she was chewing on wax. She quietly picked up another one and carefully took a small bite. It also did not have any flavor. For the first time, the sensation of chewing wax consumed her. She looked up in terror at the man next to her. The wild fruit in the hand of Sean did not move. Joyce stared at him, knowing in his silent eyes that he already understood that vampires had no sense of taste. The corners of her mouth twitched. Eat. I cannot taste it. You can taste it. Is it delicious? Her eyes made Sean tightly grip the wild fruit in his hand without realizing it. For a moment, the wild fruit in his hand seemed to be the sweetest and most enviable food in the world. He put the wild fruit on his lips while she watched with expectant eyes and gently took a bite. It is really sour. The sour taste from the wild fruit spread along his teeth and throughout his mouth instantly. It made him unconsciously want to frown. But her hopeful eyes remained on him, so he suppressed his reaction. Is it delicious? Joyce asked as she continued to look at him with those eyes. Is it sweet? The sour taste of the wild fruit remained on his tongue, but he did not know why he did not say it was sour. Sean paused and finally nodded. Joyce seemed happy to hear his words. She took another big bite of the wild fruit that was tasteless to her. I wish I knew how sweet it was, she said with a smile. You should fill your stomach first. I almost forgot. How can there be normal food at a vampire's place? I will take you to the market tomorrow. Sean looked at her without a sound. This vampire has a delicate and weak appearance like a human girl. Like the rumors he had heard, she was loved and supported by the vampires as a first-generation vampire. But she did not seem to be familiar with the habits of vampires. While Sean was lost in his thoughts, a strong wind rose in the trees. The clueless vampire girl next to him continued to eat the wild fruits in her hands. She looked up and asked, "Why are you not eating?" Sean suddenly grabbed her arm and jumped down from the treetops with her. Joyce gasped because of the sudden action. She clung to him, and the wild fruits in her hands scattered all over the ground. What is the matter? She raised her head nervously and asked as she picked up the fallen wild fruits at her feet. Nothing. Sean withdrew his gaze from the thick trees above him and looked again at the simple-minded woman squatting on the ground and picking up the wild fruits. Let us go back. Okay. Joyce put the wild fruits in her dress skirt and seemed to be in a good mood as she followed him back to the castle. Sean remembered the torn sheets and turned his head to glance at the little girl who was happily inspecting the wild fruits in her skirt. How did you go up there? Joyce looked up when she heard his words and seemed to have just recalled that the sheets had been torn. She gave a carefree smile. Let us just go back the proper way. Sean had seen how she dealt with that subordinate, so he did not expect to see that she would take herself back through the front door so easily at this moment. He looked at her with doubt and surprise. When he saw Joyce directly push the doors to the castle open and Long Aotian running down the stairs, she quickly hid the wild fruits in her skirt and boldly yelled. The knight ran away. I got him back. After Joyce was covered with Long Aotian's rainbow farts at 360 degrees, and without any gaps, she joyfully returned to the room. She shook her pockets on the sofa to take out the wild fruits. Then she happily picked up the sheets that were thrown down the window and put them back on the bed. At this time, Joyce seemed really full and tired. She muttered vaguely on the bed with her eyes closed. Sean, let us go to the market tomorrow. I can cook what you like for you. My cooking is very delicious. As she spoke, her voice gradually became slower. She finally went to sleep and her breathing became gentle. Right after Joyce fell into a deep sleep, a dark fog gradually floated in from the open window. A man in a black gown gradually revealed himself from the darkness. I am late. She is the current leader of the vampires. Is this not the best opportunity to kill her? Sean put his hand in front of the eyes of Joyce. She was almost aroused, so he whispered a spell that put her into a deep sleep again. Once he finished this, he responded to the visitor's questioning eyes. Escort Princess Isabella back to the palace. As for me, I will be back in a few days. The eyes of the shadow were stunned and he immediately stopped inquiring. He nodded and replied, Yes, your majesty. Chapter 4. Early the next morning, Long Aotian waited for news from the palace. None came. He began to think that Joyce's decision was correct. He shouted Joyce's name, his voice echoing until he reached the study. He leaned inside, his face tight with worry. Will the great demon dragon really release the primogenitor for the night? Joyce yawned, stretching her arms. He will. Long Aotian paced the room. I still have this feeling that he will not release the primogenitor for the night. How about we go to catch the princess again? She should not have arrived at the capital yet. Joyce raised an eyebrow. Are you questioning my decision? No, I am not. Long Aotian spoke in a rush. He clenched his teeth, remembering the great task of saving the primogenitor. It would be better to tie up the princess, so we have a better chance. No. Joyce stood firm. The princess needs to report to the great demon dragon. Who is going to report to him if you catch her? If he never knows who took the night, are we going to wait until the end of time for him to figure it out? But, Joyce held up a hand, silencing him. She was already developing a headache. Prepare a carriage for me. I am going to the market. The market? Long Aotian looked confused. What do you need? I will buy it. No, I am going to personally go and have a look. Joyce sounded excited. Oh right, I am taking my little knight with me. When the carriage arrived, Joyce pulled Sean downstairs. Long Aotian followed them, his posture tense. He looked like a man hunting his greatest enemy, unable to speak a word during the ride. When they stopped, Joyce pulled Sean out of the carriage. They ran toward the market, weaving through the long, busy street. The air grew noisy, filled with the bustling sound of people and the sweet, fragrant tang of blood. Long Aotian tried to keep up, but they shook him off. Joyce breathed a sigh of relief, taking in the bustling market. Her mood lifted. She patted the young man on the shoulder. Let's go. Tell sister what you like and sister will buy it for you. Sean looked at the girl. He did not refute her words. He simply followed her, watching her stop at booth after booth with wide, curious eyes. Most of the booths sold handmade items and trinkets. These goods appeared everywhere in Carnia, but Joyce wandered through each booth as if she had never seen them before. Her interest shifted when the scent of food drifted toward them. She stepped into a cake shop, examining the molds on the rack. She pulled Sean along as she picked up several shapes. Which one do you like? Joyce held them out, a glimmer of indecision in her eyes. Sean cast an indifferent glance at the cute molds. Whatever. Joyce sighed. The choice is overwhelming. She looked at them over and over, struggling to make a decision. Sean had never navigated such a confusing shopping experience. He watched her deliberate for too long. He frowned, his frustration mounting. Buy it all if you like it. Oh, that is right. Joyce smiled. She handed the molds to the owner and asked for the ingredients to bake a cake. I will make you a cake when we get back. What kind do you like? Sean paused. A distant, warm memory flickered in his eyes. He stayed silent for a moment before replying in a soft voice. Strawberry. You like strawberries? Joyce beamed. So you like strawberries? The owner returned with a few bags of ingredients. The total is 734 Carney coins. Joyce froze. She realized Long Aotian held all the money. She had abandoned him. She had no money. The owner hesitated, waiting. Are you going to? Joyce flushed with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to ask for a moment, but Sean stepped forward, placing the money on the counter. Joyce smiled at the owner, a silent promise to return. She quickly grabbed the heavy bags of flour, butter, and molds from Sean. I got it. She carried the bags with a wide grin. She had boasted about buying whatever he liked, and despite the lack of funds, she stood tall. Sean watched her. She walked out the door with ease. The shop owner gave Sean a strange look, as if accusing him of letting the little girl carry everything. Sean ignored the judgment. He focused on the petite figure carrying the weight, and followed close behind. They walked around the food area. Joyce grew curious about everything, showing a unique love for each kind of food. However, the prices were high. She realized that while Carnia was prosperous, the harvest was poor due to a drought. The coastal areas with fertile soil were mostly seized by vampires and black mages. Joyce quieted. When she picked up a bag of candied dried fruits, Sean paid for it. Is that not good? Joyce smiled, though she quickly tossed the bag into the big sack on her back. Sean said nothing, but the corners of his lips rose. They bought several large bags of goods. Joyce, with her small frame, carried the heavy load. She moved through the crowd, oblivious to the attention she drew. The people parted as they walked. Joyce stopped and turned back to Sean. She freed a hand to grab his. Stay with me. Sean jolted as she dragged him through the throng. His eyes remained fixed on her slender figure. A vendor sat on the ground near a blanket stall, telling stories to children. His Majesty the King once led the people to dispel the darkness. If Cassinio is the god of the whole continent, then His Majesty is the god of Arcarnia. Joyce glanced at the excited peddler. She frowned in disapproval and kept moving. They reached the end of the market, where two white jade statues stood. Joyce stopped, staring in surprise. The figures were carved with care, their faces beautiful. The girl rested in the arms of the man behind her. The girl possessed gentle, hopeful eyes. The man wore an arrogant expression with a superficial smile, as if the world lay beneath him. Is he your great demon dragon king? Joyce whispered. Although he is handsome, he is narcissistic to put his statue in such a conspicuous place. Who is the girl he is hugging? Joyce peered closer. Is the great demon dragon not marrying Princess Isabella? He is not going to open a harem, is he? Sean's face darkened, but he controlled his reaction. That is Cassinio. It is presumptuous to talk about the gods, but he is an old, narcissistic guy. He even added this statue himself. Joyce laughed awkwardly. So who is this girl? Sean looked at the statue. His eyes grew gentle and filled with longing, as if peering across a vast river of time to see an old friend. Aretha. She is. Sean glanced at her. She is. Joyce repeated. The former god of light. Former? Sean nodded. Former because she gave up her divinity to save Carnia, turning the original god of darkness into the god of light. God. God of darkness? Joyce stared at the statue again. So Cassinio is the current god of light? And the former is the god of darkness? Yes. And this statue, he personally added himself to it. Yes. Joyce stared at the man behind the girl. She gained a new understanding of this god. You Carnia men are shameless. One adds himself to someone else's statue. The other is an old bastard thousands of years old, who wants to marry a young princess. Sean's face went dark. Does the great demon dragon have anything he fears? Garlic? Cockroaches? Joyce muttered to herself. I need to be prepared. What if one day, on a whim, he wants to kill a few vampires as a sacrifice? What should I do? Joyce walked a few steps before realizing Sean had stopped. She noticed his strained expression and backtracked. I am just trying to protect myself. I do not want to hurt that great demon dragon. Besides, you are different. You are better than this indecent god. And that Toad the great demon dragon, who wants to marry the princess and eat swan meat at his age. Sean's face grew darker. Joyce missed the cue. She laughed. It is not just better, it is exceptionally better. You are exceptionally better. Sean remained unhappy. Joyce tried to soften her tone. We bought a lot of ingredients. I will cook delicious food for you when we get back. She saw his expression clearing. She opened her mouth to ask what he wanted to eat. A cool breeze blew past. Joyce froze. The bags on her shoulder fell to the ground. She smelled blood. The scent drifted on the cool breeze. She turned toward the end of the market. Without a word, she walked through the crowd in that direction. Chapter 5. Joyce moved fast. The market crowded with people, and she bumped into them absent-mindedly, before finally stumbling into the dark alley at the market's edge. Sean quickly ran after her. The moment he rushed into the dark alley, Joyce stood at the end of it, a still warm corpse lying before her. The corpse's neck bore two dents that looked like they came from the sharp teeth of a wild beast. A trace of slightly wet blood leaked from the wound and stained the jacket red. Joyce stood blankly before the body. Sean moved to her side and covered her eyes. She moved suddenly, her exposed, prominent fangs twitching uncontrollably. This person before him was a vampire. Before he could react, Joyce slammed him into the wall. Her eyes grew hazy, on the brink of being consumed by desire. Joyce, something was wrong. He pushed hard, but failed to budge her. Joyce leaned toward his face, sniffing. The smell of blood dyed her eyes red, and the sweet fragrance of each breath made it increasingly difficult to restrain her restlessness. Her body pressed against his to prevent him from fighting, suppressing all his struggles. What? Vampires? Where? An uproar erupted in the crowd outside the alley. Sean tensed against the cold, soft touch. He held his breath, trying to bring her back to her senses. Wake up. Joyce couldn't hear his slightly hoarse murmur. She approached his neck by instinct. The fangs between her red lips darkened, and the tip of her tongue swept across his skin, patiently testing which vein to puncture. As her tongue landed, Sean's body stiffened. He finally took a deep breath and uttered a mantra just as she was about to bite. The girl who had just bared her fangs instantly succumbed to a burst of sleepiness. In a flash, she lost consciousness and fell into his arms. Long Aotian had followed the smell, arriving before the market guards. He stared, stunned by the scene. He hurried to lift Joyce from Sean's arms, then pulled Sean along before the patrols arrived. He jumped over the wall and sprinted toward the parked carriage. Joyce woke in a daze. Drowsiness clung to her eyes. She stared blankly at the darkness, freezing for a few seconds before realizing where she was. She pushed away the wooden coffin lid and struggled to sit up. Your Highness Joyce, you are awake. Long Aotian's voice held a sigh of relief, but Joyce busied herself searching for Sean. Where is Sean? Long Aotian frowned slightly. I have put that malicious knight in the dungeon. Dungeon. Joyce sat up from the coffin at once. Where is he? Quickly get him out. This has nothing to do with him. It is me, ugh. It does not matter since it has nothing to do with him. Take me to him right now. Long Aotian remained insistent. No. For your safety, I cannot let him out again. Joyce pushed Long Aotian away to head toward the dungeon. What happened today has nothing to do with him. I almost sucked his blood, because there was a reaction to the blood there. Your Highness Joyce, you have been. Long Aotian frowned as he followed her. He started to speak, then corrected himself. I understand, Your Highness. You have not sucked blood in such a long time, so you had an abnormal reaction. In a moment, I will send our people to catch someone. No, there is no need. Joyce refused instantly. However, she thought back to Sean's blood. Seeing that Long Aotian did not doubt her ability to control her craving, she pretended to ask casually. Do you think that Sean's blood is particularly sweet? Long Aotian was stumped. Generally speaking, blood can only be distinguished from sweetness after it has been tasted. There are also clans who have skills for this through keeping blood sources captive, but the blood from that night. He frowned and acknowledged. He does indeed have a different scent from ordinary people. Hearing this, Joyce breathed a sigh of relief. She knew it. Sean's blood must be too attractive to vampires, which was why there were several times as she thought, she arrived at the dungeon with Long Aotian. Through the rusty iron bars, she met Sean's eyes, which stared at her. Under his gaze, the scene from before she lost consciousness appeared clearly before her eyes. Joyce blushed and wanted to slip away, while behind Long Aotian, but he turned around. Your Highness, we have arrived. Joyce awkwardly stopped trying to slip away and cleared her throat. What happened today has nothing to do with Sean. He inadvertently helped me. Release him. Long Aotian's eyebrows wrinkled in frustration. Your Highness, do not be bewitched by him. Joyce pressed her temples. Release him. Long Aotian unwillingly opened the dungeon's door. Joyce breathed a sigh of relief to see that Sean was not hurt. She started walking to bring him back to the room, turning to look at Long Aotian. Today, we saw a vampire hurting people in the market. Carnia is heavily guarded these days, and there is a shortage of blood. I mentioned just now that we keep blood sources in captivity, but there are also low-level vampires outside our jurisdiction, who cannot control their craving for blood. Like primitive beasts, they can only pursue their thirst for blood. Those kinds of low-level vampires can suck a person dry, which leads to death. When Joyce heard this, she asked strangely, suck dry. But the blood of the body we just saw was not sucked dry, she whispered. She thought carefully. Maybe we alarmed him, and that is why he gave up and left before fully sucking all the blood. Long Aotian was shocked by these words and frowned. Low-level vampires cannot control their craving for blood, so for them to give up halfway on the blood they are sucking is unlikely. So it is possible that it is an intelligent vampire who did it. Long Aotian considered for a moment, but did not answer. Joyce did not inquire further. The three of them returned to the room in a flash. She saw two vampire maids spreading out new bed sheets and wondered whether she should tell them not to throw out the old sheets for the time being. The maids approached and whispered, "Your Highness Joyce, this is the last set of sheets from the tributes. There will be no more sheets to use if these are broken, so." They glanced at each other, and then ambiguously glanced at Sean behind her. "Your Highness, do not be so intense next time." Joyce was shocked by their words. By the time she realized what they were saying, they had already left the room, hands covering their smiles. What did they say? Her eyes widened as she stared at the doorway. Long Aotian looked at Joyce with doubt and asked again, "What did you two do? What is so intense?" Joyce had to try hard to resist the impulse to throw Long Aotian down the stairs. Just then, a vampire knocked on the door, and Long Aotian walked over. Joyce inadvertently met Sean's eyes, which were staring at her again. Joyce swiftly looked away. "What are you looking at?" Sean shot a faint glance at Long Aotian, who went to open the door. "What do they think we have done?" It was only natural for the maids to think they had done everything. They might also be thinking he had been robbed by her coveted charms, which seemed to be a big part of their reasoning. Joyce avoided his eyes awkwardly. She only dared to complain in her mind. The servant whispered something into Long Aotian's ear, who nodded in turn. He looked up. "Your Highness Joyce, I have been negligent these past few days. Your dinner is ready." "Dinner?" Joyce froze. "You do not mean..." Before she could finish speaking, the subordinate pulled a pale girl into the room. "Your Highness, please enjoy your dinner." Joyce looked in horror at the little girl who entered, then turned her eyes to Sean. Before she had time to explain anything, the little girl slit a wound open near her neck, and bright red blood instantly rolled down. "This is the most delicious one we have in captivity. She is the one you have praised before, but have not drank yet, Your Highness Joyce." Long Aotian said this respectfully. The wound on the girl's neckline was small, and only tiny drops of blood fell. However, it was as magical as Poppy for Joyce, who had just regained consciousness and had not drank blood for several days. Joyce covered her lips, trying to restrain her desire for blood again. This girl's blood was truly sweet, but it was not enough. It seemed the longer she went without blood, the less self-control she had, and the stronger her perception of blood became. The girl's blood dripped from the wound, sliding down along her delicate collarbone. Joyce covered her lips and whispered, "No, take her away." "Your Highness Joyce." Long Aotian spoke in a predicament. "You must have blood. If you do not have it for a long time, then that." Before he could finish, Joyce pushed him away and rushed out. She stumbled all the way to the rose garden. The quiet atmosphere made her let out a sigh of relief. She hid quietly under a tree in the rose garden. She anxiously tried to calm herself, trying to make her reaction to the blood disappear. But before she could calm down from being assailed by the blood, someone pushed aside the bushes and approached her. An enchanting sweetness entered her nose. It aroused her suppressed desire again. The desire for blood crushed every ounce of reason in an instant. Following her instinct, she lunged at the incoming person. They fell to the ground and rolled into the roses together. A thorny rose pierced the knight's fingertip, and for a moment, the smell of his seductive blood eroded all her senses. She pressed his arms down firmly to ensure he remained under her control, bared her sharp fangs, and prepared to bite his neck. Just as her fangs were about to penetrate the intoxicating veins, she froze in place, as if a spell had been cast on her. She gradually regained a trace of clarity during the struggle. The man whose throat she nearly pierced was the knight she had brought back. Joyce struggled to escape, but all her senses were eroded by the strong desire for blood that came in wave after wave. She could not break free from the pull of clarity and chaos. The man before her quietly watched her reaction the entire time. And right now, in Joyce's eyes, he had become the sweetest dinner in the world, displayed in front of her. But she could not eat it. Amidst her irritation, a trace of grievance gradually emerged. She looked at his white neck, almost within reach, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva greedily as her eyes filled with tears. In front of the food she could not get closer to, she stealthily stuck her tongue out and gently licked the sweetness, as if it were a strawberry cream cake. Sean, who was calmly watching her every move, completely froze because of her actions. Chapter 6. The rose garden covering the area exuded an intoxicating fragrance, like the perfume on a girl's wrist. Some vampires woke from deep slumber, frenzied for blood upon catching a whiff. A slender girl pressed her knight to the ground in the center of the garden. She leaned over, burying her head between his neck as if indulging in the intoxicating scent of his blood. Long Aotian stopped the vampires who rushed over. He looked at the scene, surprising everyone by driving them away. He breathed a sigh of relief, looking at the rose garden behind him with a complex expression. Sean stiffened as she licked. His originally mild expression became tense. The person atop him remained unaware, her tongue flicking against his skin again and again. Sean knew she had found his artery. At this moment, she seemed like a cute, soft kitten. She seemed pleased, fond of licking him. Sean's eyes were silent as a deep pond. The ripples surged within them. He slowly raised the finger pierced by the rose, putting it in front of her. "Do you want it?" The young man's voice was hoarse and mesmerizing. The fog in Joyce's eyes grew dense. She wanted to throw herself at him, only to find her body bound. She could not move. She looked at him, pouting with misty eyes. His voice was husky and low. It lacked any trace of feeling, yet it acted like a siren charming sailors. You know, there is a price to pay for drinking my blood. Joyce could not understand his meaning. She teetered on the verge of collapsing to reach his fingertip. Like before, she stuck her tongue out, licking the drop of blood oozing from his finger. A burst of dark red blood filled her eyes. Sean opened his lips slightly. Joyce regained the ability to move, but the person in front of her seemed to grow larger. She ignored this, grabbing his hand and sucking the blood droplets from his finger. His finger grew larger too. She could barely hold it with both hands. Hands. Wait a minute. How did my hands turn into cat paws? Joyce regained awareness. She let go of the finger, scrambling to look at her appearance. She had turned into a kitten the size of a hand. She shuffled around, jumping and chasing her tail. Her incredulous look seemed to please Sean. The corners of his lips curved into a smile. Did you have enough blood? Joyce looked up, pouncing on the man, who appeared extraordinarily big, and had suddenly caused her to become so small. You can't even control your urges to suck blood. I can only make you like this for the time being. Joyce flushed. With indignation, she waved her paw at him, but he easily grabbed it. He held her in front of him to take a closer look. She had only 4 short and soft paws, so she struggled to move and flailed around. The smile on his face deepened. His fingers carefully rubbed the blood from her lips. Then, he rubbed her soft little head, and her eyes squinted instinctively. Change me back. Sean chanted a spell. The kitten the size of a hand instantly changed back to her original body, falling on him again. Her mind was muddled, but she regained awareness. She frantically stood up, retreating to the edge of the flower bushes. She reached out a hand. I will help you up. Sean did not take it. She withdrew her hand in annoyance as he sat down next to her. Joyce stood stunned. Sean did not say a word, sitting quietly as if admiring the endless sea of flowers. Joyce felt the atmosphere becoming romantic, so she found a topic. These flowers are so beautiful. Sean glanced at her, remaining silent. The atmosphere became awkward again. She berated everything about him in her mind until he asked, Do you know why these flowers are so beautiful? Joyce felt confused. A loud alarm rang in her mind. Because the vampires buried the bodies they had sucked dry under the flowers. I knew it. As soon as Sean spoke, I knew it would be like this. Joyce, who had just felt better, once again felt like she was a bad person. She rolled her eyes, but Long Aotian, who was guarding nearby, returned to check on them. Your Highness Joyce. Long Aotian looked at Sean, seeing he did not seem badly hurt. He fixed his sights on him. What do you need? Joyce cleared her throat. I have been negligent. Long Aotian's eyes were mixed with emotions. No wonder they told you not to be so intense next time. It turns out. Ha! Joyce raised her voice to interrupt him, but Long Aotian continued. Her Highness has tasted the knight's blood. His blood is indeed different from ordinary people, and it is sweeter than the food we keep in captivity. No wonder you refuse to eat the food. Joyce had no idea what this pawn of a villain was thinking, but luckily he did not say anything to embarrass her. She immediately thought of the ingredients she had left behind, because she was attracted by the smell of blood in the market. She asked what I bought at the market. We have already brought it all back. Joyce breathed a sigh of relief. She jumped to her feet with excitement and motioned for Long Aotian to take her to see the ingredients. Long Aotian was surprised at her sudden excitement. She swiftly said, Sean has just contributed his blood, and we need to prepare something for him to eat. When she finished speaking, she pulled Sean up and ran in the direction Long Aotian spoke of. Joyce had bought a lot of ingredients. She sorted through them herself and cooked an extravagant dinner. She pushed the dish in front of Sean. Taste it. Is it delicious? Her eager eyes made Sean avoid them. He took a sip. It was naturally not as delicious as what he usually had, mainly because it was a little salty from too many seasonings. But he looked up at those eyes waiting in anticipation, and could not say a word. Hearing this, Joyce's eyes shined even more. She took out a larger plate of delicious food. She sat down next to Sean and ate with delight. Would you like to try the fish to see if it tastes good? Joyce ate a mouthful of fish with him and promptly asked, what about these sweet and sour pork ribs? Delicious. Joyce continued to express her happiness. I suddenly understand why mukbangs are so popular. What about this? Joyce eagerly asked again. Try this one. The knife and fork in Sean's hands shook. He identified himself as a hostage. Joyce never sat in the garden again, because she learned the secret behind it. When she was bored, she climbed the castle walls to the fruit trees and spent the day there. She also avoided Long Aotian's daily brainwashing lessons about reviving the vampire race. Sean followed her, observing the little vampire who hid and slept every day. He realized that the little vampire was always carefully collecting the seeds of the fruits she had eaten recently. He studied the seeds she regarded as a treasure and asked without thinking, why are you collecting these? It is such a waste to let Long Aotian clear such a big area of land for the garden and those things underneath to plant roses. Joyce pointed to the sea of roses in front of her. It is just so big. You can plant some crops here, some fruit trees there, and then you can raise some livestock and poultry over there. Sean frowned at her words. Are you really going to let vampires eat all this food? They probably won't eat it. Joyce waved her hand. But Carnia's harvest is not good. We can sell these fruits and vegetables, or simply ask if anyone is willing to exchange some blood with us. Sean stared at her blankly. Exchange blood? You don't mean? It is a fact that it is good for people to draw some blood regularly. You won't understand this. Anyway, we can try this first. We need to find a way for vampires to coexist with humans. Sean looked at her thoughtfully, but did not respond. Joyce put away the seeds. She happily picked a few ripe fruits and handed them to him. What do you want to eat? Let's go and buy some seeds. When it is summer, we can eat watermelons to relieve the heat. During autumn, we can eat fresh persimmons, pears, oranges and… Joyce spoke with enthusiasm, as if those things were on the edge of her mouth. Sean looked at her, his eyes softening without realizing it. As she said this, she suddenly felt a little hungry. It had been a few days since the last time she sucked blood. Despite eating food with Sean these past days, the vampire's desire for blood was not as simple as filling the belly. It directly affected their health and physical capabilities. Her eyes fell on Sean's neck, and she had a hard time swallowing her saliva. Sean soon sensed that she was looking at him, and looked down at her straightforward eyes. He tugged at his collar. As her eyes shone even more, he whispered, "Do you want it?" Joyce swallowed her saliva again. She complained in her mind why a supporting cannon fodder knight, in this bloody otome manga, would say such ambiguous words during these kinds of conditions. At this present moment, the blood flowing under his white skin was what she needed most. Since he offered, she naturally would not be polite. After she thought about it, she threw herself onto the young man sitting on the branch next to her. Sean did not refuse, but he slightly opened his thin lips. Within a split second of earth-spinning changes, Joyce felt that the person in front of her had become huge. She raised her hands, and sure enough, she was transformed into a small kitten by this man. Joyce was filled with resentment. She was angry and tried to argue with him. However, she saw him lightly cut his finger. The sweet smell instantly filled the air. The little claws she had just unleashed were retracted. Her entire body became soft, and her soft-cut paws reached out, longing for his finger. But he raised his finger and asked patiently in a low voice, "In the future, are you going to drink like this?" She once again extended her soft-cut paw that was unable to resist the sweetness, but it was grabbed by his other hand. Because it felt nice, he gently rubbed her paw. Although Joyce's mind held resentment, the sweetness made her give up on any resistance, and used her head to rub against his fingers. The orange rays of the setting sun passed through the leaves. The scattered light fell on his eyes. They were gentle. He lowered his finger to the kitten in his arms. The kitten held up her paws to grab onto his index finger. Little by little, she licked the blood droplets seeping out from his finger. "Don't eat too much, little one." Sean gently rubbed the kitten's head with his other hand. The little kitten did not notice that he had said something. She continued to greedily lick the sweet drops of blood, and even bit hard at his healing wound with her baby fangs. Sean could not help it and laughed. His hand moved from the cute little head to the chin, and gently scratched it. Chapter 7. The kitten bared her teeth, pretending to be fierce. She acted as if he were not allowed to touch her. "Have you had enough?" Sean watched her mood shift. As soon as her belly was full, hostility returned. With a familiar movement, he slid his hand over the top of her head. The kitten bared her teeth again. "Change me back." Sean stroked her head, amusement playing on his lips. "Wait a minute." Alarm flared in Joyce. She struck his hand. "Are you going to go back on your word, and will you not change me back?" Sean studied her. "It is not bad like this." Joyce dismissed his lie. She swiped at his hand, teeth bared once more. "Change me back." Sean ignored her fierce display. He rubbed her round little head, stroking all the way down the length of her back. Joyce lost her temper. Trapped in this feline form, she could only submit to his touch. If she were human, her face would be burning bright red. Her face felt hot. Anger burned through her, so she turned away. She jumped from the treetops and squeezed through the castle gates. Sean watched her slip from his arms, surprised. Moments ago she had demanded to be changed back, and now she fled. "Your Majesty." The sudden voice pulled Sean back to reality. He turned toward the figure hidden in the tree shadows. "The princess has arrived safely. Should you not?" Sean's eyes chilled. The man in the shadows fell silent. "I still have some things to take care of." The man paused, then bowed. "Yes." Sean returned to the castle to search for the missing kitten. A flash of movement in the corner caught his eye, and he followed the little creature toward the kitchen. "What are you doing here?" Long Aotin directed orders in the kitchen until he spotted Sean. He frowned. "What are you doing here?" Sean scanned the floor, spotting smooth fur between the table and chair legs. He raised an eyebrow. "I am looking for a cat." "A cat?" Confusion washed over Long Aotin. He followed Sean's gaze and spotted the kitten beneath the table. He did not want Sean wandering, so he frowned. "Stay there. Do not move. I will get it." Long Aotin rolled up his sleeves and crouched down to capture the animal. Joyce would not be caught so easily. She watched his movements, waiting until he reached for her. She darted out from under the table. Long Aotin grasped at empty air. He lunged after her, fingers brushing her neck, but she danced away and leaped onto the kitchen table. The tight space hampered Long Aotin. Irritation grew as he failed to catch her. Patience abandoned him. After she dodged his grasp again, he finally pinned one of her paws. Joyce struggled, her trapped paw thrashing. She knocked over a bottle of milk, splashing it across Long Aotin. As Long Aotin frantically wiped his clothes, she slipped free once more. Sean watched from the kitchen door. The vampire and the cat turned the room into a disaster zone, knocking over half the seasoning on the counter. Long Aotin clenched his teeth, grabbing her tail in a fit of rage. Joyce glared up at him, still struggling. "Look, a white cat has turned into a dirty cat." Long Aotin snorted. "This animal is filthy. I will wash it for you. Joyce was exhausted from the chase. Her anger flared. She struggled to escape, but Long Aotian held her tightly. Oh right. Have you seen Her Highness Joyce? As he reached Sean, Long Aotian frowned. The kitten writhed in his grasp. Sean glanced at the cat and replied indifferently. No, I do not know where she went. It is almost time for class. Long Aotian believed she lacked proactivity in saving the primogenitor. He would trap her for hours every day, lecturing her about the power of the primogenitor, Kathy. Joyce rolled her eyes, remaining silent. Realizing she was about to be dragged away, she looked helplessly at Sean, begging for help. Sean watched quietly. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He waited for her to ask. She could not explain to this foolish subordinate why she had changed into a cat. She certainly could not explain why she could not attend lessons. Sean remained still, watching as she was carried away. She poked her small head out of Long Aotian's arms, locking eyes with Sean. She glared at him. He was doing nothing but watching. In the end, she opened her mouth. Meow. Sean rarely expressed emotion, but now he chuckled. He approached Long Aotian and took the stained kitten into his arms. I will do it myself. Long Aotian stood empty-handed, stunned by the sudden exchange. The creature looked so wronged in Sean's arms that something within Long Aotian softened. He watched Sean walk away, scratching his head. He turned to a vampire maid nearby. Hey, where can I find a cat seller? The maid started. Do you want to buy a cat? Of course not. Long Aotian shook his head. Go out and snatch one. Sean returned to the room. The aggrieved kitten buried her head in his arms. Once they reached the room, she jumped down. She landed on the soft rug and bared her teeth. Change me back. Sean smiled, squatting gently in front of her. That meow was good. Why do you not do it again so I can hear it? Joyce raised a paw, striking at him in anger. Her attack barely registered. He caught her soft paws in the palm of his hand. Where did you learn that? Turning a person into a cat. Sean paused, his tone casual. School of Magic. He looked down at her eager eyes. Do you want to go there and have a look? Joyce nodded at once. Sean's fingertips slid over the kitten's fluffy cheeks. I will take you there when you tidy up the rose garden. When will you change me back? Joyce could not pull away from his grip. Her soft body relaxed against the carpet. The sight was cute enough to melt him. Sean picked the kitten up by her two soft paws, tucking her into his arms, and walked toward the bathroom. Alarm bells rang in Joyce's mind. She grabbed the bathroom door frame. What are you going to do? Let me go. Sean raised an eyebrow, his expression innocent. I am taking you to the bath, of course. No. Let go. Joyce clung tighter to the door, refusing to budge. Her face burned so hot that if a cat could blush, she would be bright red. Sean's eyes held a smile. He reached out, prying her two cat paws from the door. What are you doing? The maid's voice echoed from behind them. Joyce sealed her lips. She dared not speak. Her paws remained fixed to the door. I am going to give it a bath. Sean spoke in a good mood. He rarely spoke to the maids. The vampire maid looked at the dirty kitten in his arms. Yes, it should be given a bath. Joyce rolled her eyes. But I heard that cats are very resistant to bathing. Sean rubbed the cat's head. Go back to work. I can do it. The maid decided nothing inappropriate was occurring. She left and closed the door. Thousands of unsuitable images flashed through Joyce's mind. Sean actually wanted to do such a thing to her while she was a cat. She flailed her paws. What are you going to do to me? Even though I kidnapped you and I suck your blood, you cannot. She pushed against Sean's shoulder, trying to escape. Her front paws were so weak. She could not escape his grasp. Do not mess around. Wah. It is my fault for being greedy for your beauty. But this kind of thing has to be consensual, right? I am not ready yet. Why do you not give me some more time? This kind of thing? Sean's voice held a playful tone. What kind of thing? How can you make a girl like me say it out loud? Joyce buried her head in his neck. She spoke sheepishly. But how do I say this? I am a modern woman. I know I must be emitting a fatal charm all the time. If you cannot help yourself, I will. With a splash, before she could finish, she was tossed into a bathtub full of water. Just before she hit the warm water, she changed back to her original form. She sat in the water, looking at Sean, who struggled to hold back a smile. Sean turned around without a word and walked out of the bathroom. Joyce stared blankly at his back. Hey, you are not. Sean stopped and looked back. What? Did you want to invite me in? Joyce shook her head at once. Sean turned back and handed her a small mirror. Although you are emitting a fatal charm all the time, should you not take a proper bath right now? Confused, Joyce looked at the mirror. She saw her familiar face, but it was smeared with colors. She looked ridiculous. Charm had nothing to do with it. Long after Sean had left, she could not recover. She sat blankly in the bathtub, staring at the empty room. What the hell did I just say? I do not want to be a human anymore. Oh, right. I am not human. Chapter 8. The next day, Joyce had a long formal talk with Long Aotian. They held a serious discussion regarding the cleanup of the rose garden. The land currently grows roses. Besides visual pleasure, it serves no real purpose. Carnia is short on goods. If we use this land for farming, we can try to exchange our produce for gold coins and blood with the humans. Joyce usually remained easygoing, but a light shone in her eyes as she spoke. If our people do not want to farm, we can lease out some land to the farmers nearby. They would just have to give us a part of the harvest. Long Aotian disagreed with this approach. The rose garden had remained a part of the castle for 1,000 years. However, Joyce persisted. The current situation for the vampires worsened compared to the past. Princess Isabella of Sedan and the King of Carnia planned a marriage not only for prosperity, but also to create a union between both kingdoms. Once the two empires united, they would target the vampires, who symbolized the dark forces. Long Aotian understood this situation well. One reason they kidnapped Princess Isabella involved rescuing the primogeniture. The other reason involved destroying the marriage between the two kingdoms. Joyce held no intention of participating in these fights. She just wanted to eat, drink, play, and be happy. However, the territory occupied by vampires was not small, and the blood shortage problem pressed upon them. Joyce proposed growing crops in exchange for blood. Her idea seemed too idealistic for Long Aotian to accept. Your Highness Joyce, Long Aotian explained with patience. Our most important task is to save the primogeniture. Kathy, the primogeniture, is an immortal god. She will lead us in restoring darkness to this land. Carnia will become our hunting ground when that time comes. Joyce listened to the bold rhetoric. She thought of the thin, weak little girl forced to provide blood. She patted him on the shoulder, speaking with sincerity to make him recognize the cruel reality of his idealistic words. Long Aotian, regarding the destruction of kingdoms and such, I think it is better if we solve the problem of having enough food first. Long Aotian straightened his collar. He turned away and grumbled with coldness. Your Highness, my full name is Nicholas Long Aotian. Joyce stifled a chuckle that almost choked her. She found it extremely amusing to observe this occasional broken record and sunder villain. Long Aotian said this to respond to Joyce regarding her proposal. She planned on being an arm-flinging shopkeeper and dragged Sean out to play, but Long Aotian stopped her again. Recently, has Sean been? Long Aotian cleared his throat. Taking care of a cat? Joyce froze. She raised her head and glared at Sean, then turned back to Long Aotian. It is true, but I felt so annoyed that I made him throw it away. Throw it away? Long Aotian looked shocked. Regret and disappointment crossed his face. Is there a problem? Joyce raised her chin. No, there is not, Long Aotian replied with resolve. He paused, then called for Joyce to stop again, as she walked away. I ordered some servants to clean up the rose garden and bring back some seeds. However, none of our people know how to farm. This. Joyce paused to think, then nodded. That is great. I will invite some experienced farmers to teach everyone. She took Sean to a nearby farm to find someone. No humans lived close to the vampire territory around the castle. It took Joyce and Sean a long time to reach the nearest farm. Joyce approached the farm, which stood completely barricaded. She brought coins and seeds this time. She presented herself with politeness and kindness. The farmers soon welcomed her inside. Joyce followed them to look around. She changed into clothes convenient for work and learned to farm from several farmers. Sean stood by, silent. Joyce usually showed laziness. He expected her to borrow 2 people and return, but she stayed and learned how to farm with seriousness. Joyce learned from them with focus. She had a selfish reason for doing this. If she left the vampire territory and found a place to hide to survive, learning survival skills would benefit her. She followed the instructions of the farmers and sowed seeds with care. Soon, she finished sowing seeds in an area with them. Sean stood alone to the side. She pulled him over to join her. Sean remained uninterested, but he stood beside her. You do not need to personally farm. Why are you learning this? Joyce looked at Sean with mixed feelings. She replied with honesty. I do not need to know how to do it now, but maybe I will need it in the future. In the future? Sean raised his eyebrows. If we follow the plot perfectly, our lair might be destroyed by that great demon dragon because of some random reason or excuse. Did you hear me? Joyce leaned closer to Sean. The great demon dragon does not have a girlfriend when he is over 1,000 years old. These people suffer from a sickness from holding it in. It is a kind of sickness that likes to target poor, weak, and helpless villains like us. Sean's steady expression collapsed slightly. He paused and whispered, if I remember correctly, you must be 1,000 years old, right? Joyce froze. Her character's body suggested that is truth. Have you had a boyfriend before? Sean looked her up and down. Did you hold it in until you became sick? Joyce gritted her teeth. Fine. I know you are a minion for that great demon dragon. I will not talk about it anymore. Joyce stopped talking and squatted down. She pulled out the weeds at her feet as if every weed represented Sean. She took her anger out on the weeds. The man next to her gracefully squatted down and pulled out the weeds next to her. Joyce's angry expression disappeared. She smiled at him. Are you here to make up with me so soon? Who? Sean raised his head. He looked at her eyes, curved into a smile, and swallowed his denial. He looked down and remained quiet. Have you heard? The farmers whispered. I heard that Princess Isabella of Sedan arrived at the capital, but His Majesty did not greet her. How could the princess put up with that when she was born with a silver spoon? How can Sedan compare to Carnia? The king of Carnia is the best king in the world. But I heard that Isabella is the most beautiful person in Sedan, and she is the king of Sedan's beloved daughter. Joyce listened to the people talking about what happened in the capital. Doubts filled her. Isabella should have received a grand reception upon arriving at the capital since she was the female lead. How could the king of Carnia not even hold a reception for her? Unless... Joyce poked the little knight beside her. She used a voice that only he could hear. Is your king suffering from a curse? He did not understand. Joyce explained. For example, did he become old or disfigured from a curse that can only be lifted by a kiss of true love from the princess? Sean did not speak, and Joyce felt more and more sure of her theory. She made a logical analysis. Do not be fooled by how he is avoiding the princess right now. He will definitely change. Change? It is just, Joyce scratched her head to find the right words. It is just that you should not be fooled by his failure to see Princess Isabella. It might even be that he took an oath to never fall in love with the princess, but that will come back to bite him. It will not be long before he falls in love with the princess and loves her to death. Sean paused. Impossible. Joyce patted him on the shoulder firmly, with a confident grin. You do not believe what I am saying now, but you will get it later. Sean frowned. A farmer called out to them with cheer. It is the apple harvest right now. Madam Joyce, would you like to try some apples with your husband? They brought over a basket full of apples and handed one to Joyce. The man's words made Sean frown. He pursed his lips. He started to speak, but Joyce grabbed his arm and took an apple with a smile. Thank you. A bright light shone in her eyes. Apples are his favorite. Sean glanced at her. Her eyes remained fixed on the apples. He said nothing. After taking an apple, Joyce rubbed it with the hem of her jacket and handed it to him. Sean refused. You eat it. Joyce did not speak, but her eyes held anticipation. Sean could see she had no intention of eating the apple first. He took a bite of the apple. He heard Joyce ask, "Is it sweet?" Joyce took a big bite of the apple and ate it with delight. The farmers observed their interactions with hearty smiles. You two have such a good relationship. Sean chewed in silence, wondering where they saw a good relationship. In the evening, the considerate farmers invited them to stay for dinner. Joyce accepted with happiness and helped them. The atmosphere felt joyful until the food arrived. Joyce looked at the table full of food and used her knife and fork like everyone else. Sean sat down with her despite his lack of interest in the food. Joyce ate with cheer until her knife and fork fell to the ground. She covered her lips in surprise. Madam Joyce, are you okay? A farmer asked with concern. Joyce lowered her head. She kept covering her lips without answering. Everyone asked questions out of concern, but her fangs protruded, catching Sean's attention under her hands. Confusion filled him. Vampires exposed fangs only when they longed for blood. Only a few days had passed since the last time Joyce drank blood, so no reason existed for such a response. The farmer's wife sitting next to Joyce approached with concern. It looked like she was about to lower her head and ask if she was okay. Joyce retreated. If they discovered she was a vampire. Her face flushed. Sean put his arm around her shoulder and helped her to her feet. Sorry, my wife is not feeling well. The farmer's wife's eyes flashed with understanding. She exclaimed with surprise. Your wife is pregnant. Joyce followed Sean's lead to stand up. She slipped and nearly fell to the ground. Chapter 9. Sean held Joyce firmly and helped her out of the room under everyone's concerned eyes. Her footsteps were a little shaky. With Sean's support, she still trembled as she walked. It was getting dark, and her body was so weak that she could barely stand even with Sean's support. Her head rested lightly on his shoulder, like she was leaning into his arms. A farmer approached and asked kindly, "Is your wife all right?" "She will be fine, thank you." "Where is your manor located?" "I'll send some people over tomorrow and have them teach your people how to farm." Sean glanced at the man next to them and answered for Joyce, "Thank you. I'll pick them up tomorrow." With that, a few people came out looking worried. Sean picked her up into a princess carry and quickly walked up to the carriage to leave. The farmer bid them farewell. Sean focused on the person next to him who was already ripping off his collar and biting the side of his neck. The pain from her fangs piercing him caused him to frown slightly. He looked down at the little girl who was pressing him in the corner of the carriage. He raised his hand and gently rubbed her soft hair. Slow down. This time, there was a moment of clarity in Joyce's mind, and her flickering eyes looked up at his face. She whispered something. Sean did not catch it. He patiently murmured back, Joyce's eyes once again landed on the bright red pearls of blood dripping down his clavicle, because she had let go of his neck. The darkness in her eyes surged, and she gently lowered her head to use her tongue to lick the blood. Sean's eyes dimmed a bit from her unconcerned movements. It was obvious that she was the one who forcefully held him at first. Yet, now she was leaning against his shoulder like a soft kitten who had satisfied her desires. Back then, he didn't turn her into a cat under the watchful eye of the farmers, nor did he do that now. Instead, he gently stroked her long soft hair as if she was a kitten in his arms. Blood. Joyce's strained voice had a slight tremor as she clenched his collar. The farm smells like blood. Sean was surprised. Let's go back to the farm. Sean composed himself. He would not allow it. He said, I'll take you back to the castle first. But the smell of blood this time is even stronger than last time, and I'm afraid the farm will. Joyce sat up again. We'll sneak in. They won't find us. Sean frowned slightly at her words, his brow furrowed with worry for the farm. After briefly muttering to himself, he stopped the carriage to turn back to the farm. Joyce looked at the vampire who had been driving them the entire time. She suddenly hesitated. Sean was a captive held inside the castle, but the vampires were listening to his orders now. Even though she wanted to go back to the farm, why did she still need Sean's consent? At this thought, Joyce looked at him and mumbled to herself, "Why do I need to ask for your permission on whether I can go back or not?" Sean raised an eyebrow and looked at her while she was deep in her thoughts. But Joyce was never the one to waste her thoughts on such minor matters, especially when there was still a bit of blood trickling down his neck. Gulp. Joyce swallowed her saliva. Even though she felt full now, she could not resist the delicious temptation in front of her and pounced on him again. But this time, as soon as she moved, she was turned into a kitten. Joyce was shocked. For a moment she forgot the deliciousness in front of her. She bared her teeth as the ends of her fur stood up. The corners of Sean's lips rose. He reached out and rubbed the kitten's head, whispering, "No one else can discover you like this. Do you really think it's that easy being a cat than a person? Isn't it easier?" Joyce didn't bother to argue with him over the question of being a cat or a human. She watched the drops of blood near Sean's collarbone fall. Then, she used her two short hind legs to lunge forward and stop the rich delicacy from being wasted. Sean looked at the kitten in his arms, trying to reach his shoulder. His eyes softened in the shadows of the swaying trees outside the window. He reached out and gently stroked its chin. The kitten seemed to purr with dissatisfaction. But what could she do when there was a delicacy in front of her? She seemed to be used to his touch, and did not even bat an eye. Sean's fingertips lightly caressed the bottom of the kitten's soft chin, and there was a rare moment of carefree serenity in the fast-moving carriage. As if he had slowly become dissatisfied with the softness of the kitten's chin, his fingertips gradually slid towards the white and fluffy belly. Joyce froze as she was licking the blood. Her face flushed in an instant. Filled with anger and embarrassment, she tilted her head and bit his wrist. Although it was just a kitten's fluffy belly to Sean, to her, he raised an eyebrow slightly at her reaction. The carriage slowly came to a stop at the edge of the farm. Joyce loosened her bite, and Sean looked away. He maintained a dignified expression as he took the cat into his arms and got out of the carriage. Over there. Joyce looked up from his arms and towards the farm in the darkness. This time, instead of going through the main entrance, Sean jumped onto the farm's tall brick fence and sprinted towards a shack with flickering lights. "I told you we should have moved away earlier. How many times has it been? These vampires have really gone too far. It's really terrifying here. I don't want to stay here any longer." This was a closed-off pigsty, but now it was surrounded by people. Their faces were filled with fear and anger. A farmer with a serious expression was facing the crowd. "I have already discussed this with Long Aotian. He said vampires were not allowed to come out to hunt a long time ago," Joyce murmured under her breath. Sean did not speak. His eyes glanced at the dead body being carried by a stretcher. But Joyce turned her eyes to look at the farmer, and wondered in a low voice, "I always thought he looked familiar." Seeing that the farmer was silent, a woman who had lived on the farm for many years spoke up in a worried voice, "I think it's better if we move out as soon as possible. We are no different from these pigs and sheep to those vampires. Today, these 4 people." "I know." The farmer, who had been silent for a long time, stated, "Let's deal with this first. It's getting late. We should all go to bed early. As for moving away, I'll think about it again." Although the people on the farm were scared and had complaints about the decision, they could only sigh and follow the instructions to carry away the dead bodies of their companions. Sean watched as the crowd of people dispersed and quietly followed. The 4 bodies were temporarily placed in an empty shack. Sean went in silently. As soon as he reached one of the bodies, the cat in his arms jumped out and sniffed the wound near the body's neck. She had a strange feeling. Although she still had a strong reaction to an excessive amount of blood after drinking Sean's blood, she could not feel an attraction to the blood she was currently faced with. It looked like she had made rapid progress. It shouldn't be long before she didn't have to reveal her true nature as a vampire because of her reaction to the scent of blood. With this view, she could not help but approach the dead bodies in somewhat high spirits. Sean thought she was craving for blood again and reached out to pull her back. Joyce was already approaching the wound. Just when she wanted to take a closer look at the wound, she was grabbed by the person behind her. She immediately expressed impatience and struggled. "What are you doing? Let me go." Sean frowned slightly and held out his wrist. "Drink mine." It was then that Joyce realized that Sean thought she wanted to drink the blood of these corpses. Speechless, she rolled her eyes. Who would want to drink their blood? "I want to check their wounds." Sean looked at her with skepticism, but still put her down. Under his suspicious gaze, Joyce looked up and purred in dissatisfaction as she approached the wound on the corpse again. "There's something strange about this wound." The wound marks seemed to have been from 2 fang piercings. There was a bit of blood oozing along it. Joyce examined the blood from the wound and moved closer to sniff it. "I don't think this was done by a vampire from the castle. Long Aotin is not very reliable, but he knows how to manage the vampires. And he has said before that they would not leave a mark like this." Joyce took another look at the wound and said to herself, "I didn't expect this to be a mystery manga. Ha, oh, nothing." Joyce returned to reality, but continued to let out a sigh on the inside. These strange events linked together would create a clue. Then, the male lead and the female lead's mission would be to follow this lead to find the truth to the situation and solve the mystery. It was a good idea to make sure that they were not in danger for the time being. As for everyone else, it was obvious that they were not someone she should be worried about. Sean looked at the blood that remained around the wound, and then at the other bodies. As he expected, there was blood oozing from each body's wound. He frowned slightly, and his eyes looked back at the cat. "What do you think?" When Sean asked her the question, her lips twitched before she replied with, "Let's not worry about it. Such a major event would obviously be a part of the plot that the male lead needs to check. We should eat, drink, and stay away from things that are suspicious." Male lead. Sean frowned slightly again. He was puzzled by her strange words that felt like they had come out of nowhere again. "It's all right. Didn't they say they would report this before they left just now? If it is like that, then your mighty king will get to the bottom of it." Joyce lowered her head slightly and thought about another thing. Now that something like this has happened, How can we ask the people on the farm to come to the castle for help? There is a strong possibility that they won't come when they hear it is the castle. It was the first time Sean had heard something from her regarding the king that was not a complaint. Since he couldn't consider it a praise, Sean raised an eyebrow with a slight frown. It will be simple. If worse comes to worst, you can tie them up and bring them to the castle. After they finish teaching the vampires, I'll erase their memories of the day. Joyce's eyes brightened at that. She was even more curious about the school of magic. But before she could speak, Sean asked another question. But since it was a vampire who committed this, aren't you afraid that the king's investigation will lead to you? Joyce was dumbfounded by his words. She suddenly realized that although she did not kidnap the princess, and had succeeded in being a salted fish by her quick witness, if the powers of the manga plot were irreversible, then wouldn't she still be drawn into the conflict because of this incident with the dead bodies and end up being destroyed by that great demon dragon? When Joyce thought of this, she was rooted to the spot. She needed to speed things up and get the vampires to learn practical skills to survive. In this way, she could escape from everyone as soon as possible, so that she could acquire her own survival skills. Sean's eyes were always on her. The cat's expressions were probably so revealing that he unconsciously smiled and questioned, "Don't you believe the king will investigate this matter clearly?" "That's true, but..." Joyce looked up, and her eyes paused for a moment when she looked at Sean. "He's so handsome and rich. He also tastes so delicious when I can take a few bites. Can I take him with me?" With these thoughts, and without realizing it, Joyce whispered, "Little knight, if I keep cooking delicious food for you, then would you like to run away with me?" Chapter 10. Sean was caught off guard for a moment. Joyce looked at him with anticipation, just like every time she waited for him to express his opinion on the taste of the dish. But Sean did not respond. He simply picked up the soft kitten again, and left the shack where the dead bodies were kept. Their investigation revealed that the villain was a sand sculptor named Long Aotin in the otome manga. The male lead and female lead would soon come to the farm to further investigate, deepen their feelings for each other, and then kill the vampires hiding in the castle close by. Joyce did not wait for Sean's answer. Although she was somewhat disappointed, she accepted it as his normal behavior. It was because of this that she wanted to try and win back the knight's heart from the great demon dragon. First, the beautiful cat trick. With this in mind, she looked at Sean, who was holding her and returning to the carriage. She brightened, raised her head, and rubbed the palm of his hand. Such an intimate gesture made Sean's fingers pause. He looked down at the kitten in his hands, then quietly pricked a small wound on his finger. Joyce was speechless as she looked at him. Once again she was misunderstood by that stupid knight who thought she was making a blood-sucking request. She wondered, how come he isn't one bit romantic? Every time she did something, he assumed she wanted to suck his blood. No wonder he had the face of a male lead, but remained a supporting character. "I don't want blood." Even though she accused the knight for the way he acted, she approached the wound on his fingertip and licked away the blood seeping out. She seemed to be getting used to her cat form. She placed her smooth front paws over his wrist to protect the food and prevent him from moving his hand away. The knight's blood was so tempting that she let out a soft, contented sound. The faint moonlight slowly entered the spacious carriage and filled it with a golden light. Sean's eyes, fixed on the young kitten, were coated with a layer of soft light. He looked at the kitten feeding on him and used his other fingers to tickle her chin. The move felt unfamiliar at first, but she adjusted. The gentle and soothing action made Joyce feel slightly cozy. She lowered her lids and raised her chin naturally to match his actions. Gradually, she became drowsy. She curled up in his arms and found a comfortable position to lie down. Although the little knight was very cold, his arms were warm. In her dazed state, Joyce thought, "It is good to be a cat." Joyce rubbed her eyes as the carriage slowly pulled up in front of the castle. Instead of jumping off Sean, she snuggled up to him and found a more comfortable position. Sean chuckled. He did not change her back to her original form and walked into the castle with the cat in his arms. As soon as Sean entered the castle, he ran into Long Aotin, who was squatting in the courtyard looking for something. Sean and Long Aotin had nothing to do with each other these days, so Sean did not want to greet him. But Long Aotin saw him and stood up abruptly, looking guilty. Weeds clung to his clothes. His eyes darted around in panic, stopping when they saw the kitten in Sean's arms. "Didn't you throw it away?" Long Aotin asked, staring blankly at the kitten. Sean raised an eyebrow. "Today, I saw that she was very obedient, so I picked her back up." Long Aotin and the cat nestled in Sean's arms fell silent at the same time. One did not know that she had been picked back up for being obedient, and the other did not know that the cat he had been looking for all day had run back into the arms of the man who abandoned her. Long Aotin looked at the kitten in Sean's arms with a complicated expression. "It really is an unfaithful cat." Sean seemed to be in a good mood as he passed him and went straight into the castle. Early the next day, Sean left for the farm to pick up the farmers. This time, Joyce did not follow him. Instead, she went to the large clearing outside the castle and organized the farm tools Long Aotin had purchased. Long Aotin stood next to her, looking unhappy the entire time. He saw that Joyce was happily organizing the farm tools and complained, "Your Highness Joyce, how can you let the knight pick up the farmers by himself? What if he runs away?" Joyce paused, then continued with a smile. "Xiao Long, you do not understand how to make the cold night stay. Tying him up is not enough. It is more important to tie his heart. Please call me Nicholas Long Aotin," Long Aotin emphasized. He tried to hide the disdain in his eyes. So you really want to keep him in the castle? Are you reluctant to trade him for the life of the primogenitor? No matter what, always be prepared, Joyce said solemnly. If the great demon dragon refuses to make the exchange with us, then should we sit back and wait for our death? We should make the night side with us. It is the only way we can minimize our losses. Then, how can we make the night side with us? Joyce looked at the villain next to her, whose intelligence was falling, and the feeling of overpowering superiority from her intelligence made her stand straighter. Have you ever heard of the saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach? Now that I have captured the knight's stomach through my perfect food, he must be on our side. Joyce patted Long Aotin on the shoulder. Do not worry. Through my years of experience, most villains die from talking too much. The only way to keep living is by being a salted fish. As long as we have enough salted fish, we will certainly keep living. Whether the male and female leads kill us for farming, or love us for farming, as long as they discover that we have lost our desire to win and concentrate on farming every day, then the great demon dragon will never go after us, since we are poor, weak, helpless vampires who only know how to farm. Before she could finish her words, she saw that the corners of Long Aotin's mouth were drawn out into a straight line. She stopped and patiently asked, "What is the matter? Did you hear what I just said?" "I heard you." Long Aotin was used to her strange, indoctrinating words these days. He gradually understood the meaning of some words, such as, villains die from talking too much. For the first time, Joyce felt deep contempt from this villain with no wisdom. She rolled up her sleeves and prepared to tell Long Aotin that she was not talking too much. When she saw that Sean had come back with the two invited farmers, she quickly and cheerfully greeted them. Welcome. However, the two men, who had praised her enthusiastically only yesterday, were now retreating in horror. It is like they think I am some kind of evil serpent villain. Joyce suddenly remembered that she was not the notorious villain in the book. Thus, she set her eyes on the Long Aotin next to her. "Oh, the castle is full of villains," Joyce said respectfully. "Actually, we are good people. Even though we are vampires, we also farm and eat vegetables." As if to prove her words, a nearby vampire pulled up the human girl they had raised and bit her neck. The farmer's eyes instantly became more alarmed. Joyce pressed her temples. "Long Aotin, pass on my orders. Those who do not learn how to farm and finish tilling their assigned farmland will not be allowed to eat." Saying so, she turned toward the two farmers. "You can be rest assured that I will guarantee your safety while you are here." Then, she squatted in the field like when she was seriously learning to farm yesterday. "Is it like this?" The farmers eyed her suspiciously at first, but in the end, squatted down beside her and carefully guided her on how to farm. Joyce studied hard, and the entire afternoon passed in the blink of an eye. Seeing that it was past morning, she thought of how Sean and the farmers who had come to teach them how to farm had not eaten yet. Thus, she offered to prepare some food. The vampires complained about this. Some were even bold enough to stand up and shout, "Why do they get to eat?" Joyce raised her chin, and the superiority of her ancestry made these restless vampires lower their heads. "Nothing will happen to you if you don't drink blood for a few days, but humans are different." Without further explanation, Joyce instructed Long Aotin to watch over these vampires and pulled the three humans into the castle. She put Sean and the other humans in the dining room and happily skipped to the kitchen to prepare some food. She did not know when Long Aotin had come to the kitchen. He observed the busy Joyce, frowned, and asked, "Your Highness Joyce, do you like the night?" Joyce stilled. She did not seem to think that Long Aotin would ask her this kind of question. She tilted her head and considered it. The little knight is truly a rare and good companion. He is handsome, knows magic, and his blood is delicious. Even the way he pets me as a cat is wonderful. She struck the counter 3 times with her hand. Why the hell am I thinking about the way he pets me as a cat? However, if I am hunted by the great demon dragon one day, will Sean really be on my side? While Joyce mused, she could not stop herself from looking down and sighing deeply. Long Aotin misunderstood her sigh and frowned. "Your Highness Joyce, I want to have the primogenitor back. But if you like that knight, then why do you not turn him into one of us?" Joyce was shocked. She immediately understood the meaning behind Long Aotin's words and shook her head. "Why do I need to turn him into a vampire? Is he not fine the way he is now? And my cooking is very delicious, so what if there comes a day when he loses his sense of taste and cannot eat it?" The little knight's body is cold, but it is actually within the temperature range of a human. However, if he becomes completely cold, his arms will not feel as comfortable. Joyce suddenly regained her senses and patted her flushed face. "What am I thinking? Is there something I can perhaps help with?" Sean's voice made Joyce turn around guiltily. Her eyes looked at him stiffly, while his deep, clear eyes stared at her as if he could see through her deepest thoughts. Joyce swiftly looked away. No. She felt guilty as she added salt to the pot. In a fluster, she turned around to grab a bowl, and Sean was already standing behind her. He calmly handed a bowl to her as she looked on in surprise. "Thank you." Joyce quickly reached out and took it. Sean did not let go of the bowl. His eyes, which were slightly looking down at her body, moved to gaze into her eyes with suspicion. "You like me?" Joyce was so startled that she nearly caused the bowl in their hands to fall onto the ground. Sean firmly caught the bowl. His warm fingertips inadvertently brushed hers. His gaze never moved away from her, and he did not even blink. Joyce gulped hard, her heart beating rapidly. She looked up perplexedly into his eyes. "If I like you, then would you be willing to run away with me?" Chapter 11. If I like you, would you be willing to run away with me? Sean looked away from Joyce's hopeful eyes as each second passed. No. She knew he would answer that way, but Joyce still lowered her head in disappointment. Her shoulders slumped like a young cat that failed to please its owner. Sean reached out and rubbed her head. Why do you want to run away? Joyce curled her lips. With a villain like me, the great demon dragon, the king, will happily come here to kill a few vampires when he is in a good mood. Or he will kill a few as sacrifices to the gods if he is in a bad mood. He won't. Sean paused. For the first time, he offered an explanation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ignored you for so long. Joyce replied in a matter-of-fact tone. He is currently busy being in love with the princess, so of course he has no time to take care of us minions. Sean took a deep breath. He frowned, deep in thought, realizing it was urgent to change the vampire's perception of the king of Carnia. His voice deepened. Who says the king is in love with the princess? Don't tell me he isn't? Joyce looked surprised, as if she had discovered a secret. As the male lead of the otome manga, there must be something special about him to stand out from so many male supporting characters. Sean did not react to her praise, but he heard her continue. But it has been such a long time. Why isn't he done pursuing Princess Isabella? You are one of his rivals, and you have all been kidnapped by me. Joyce giggled as she approached. Is it because he can't do it? Sean stood there, stunned. Did I figure it out? Joyce studied Sean's face. With a low chuckle, she ambiguously said, I have seen a lot of this kind of trope. He needs to be cured. Naturally, the princess will cure him of his inability. He will fall in love with the princess, and then. Sean's face grew darker. Okay, I will stop. Joyce held back her excitement. She remembered that Sean had defended the great demon dragon, so she awkwardly stopped talking about it. Let's go eat. She happily took his hand. Come on, let's go eat first. Joyce prepared a lavish dinner to be hospitable to the two farmers who came to help. One did not know if it was the look or the smell that made it delicious, but it made the two men swallow. Thank you for your help today. Please help yourself. The two men hesitated, but when they saw Sean pick up a knife and fork and begin to eat as usual, they gradually let down their guard. They followed him awkwardly and took a small bite. Joyce did not dine with the three of them, but she watched Sean eat. Sean, who had just eaten a piece of beef, looked up at her calmly. Joyce knew that Sean was telling her the food was good. Her eyes filled with joy. She felt happy even though she was not eating with them. After the two farmers tried the food, they looked unhappy and frantically picked up the water next to them to gulp it down. Joyce started slightly. She stared at them for a bit, then lowered her eyes, and did not say a word about it. In the next few days, the bloodthirsty vampires began the farm work seriously. But because of this, Joyce kept a closer watch on the two farmers, instructing them, in case the hungry vampires did anything to hurt them. To Joyce's relief, the castle's enormous rose garden gradually turned into soil for crops. She sat in front of the soil that seemed to hold a huge amount of fertility, and looked excitedly at the man next to her. Sean, you said you would take me to the School of Magic when I transformed the rose garden. Joyce's eyes were full of curiosity and delight. Can we go now? Yes. The carriage passed through the massive market, and Joyce tightened her cloak. They had to pass through the capital to get to the School of Magic. Joyce cautiously checked out the bustling market. Each building seemed to hold an ancient and mysterious power. With curiosity and eagerness, her eyes landed on the pedestrians talking to each other. Do you like it here? Sean asked. Joyce nodded. She immediately put away the look of disappointment that flashed across her face and smiled. How far away is the School of Magic? Can we get there before dark? Speaking of the School of Magic, does everyone fly around on brooms there? What kind of magic does everyone study? And, with so many questions, which one should I answer first? Oh, Joyce smiled sheepishly. I am just so excited. Sean's eyes were gentle. We will get there before dark. As for the School of Magic, why do you want to ride a broom? But you can ride one if you want. Magic is probably divided by the elements. I can take you to a place where you test the elements. Really? Joyce's eyes lit up. Oh, also, did both gods of light graduate from the School of Magic? What about you? Did you graduate here too? Sean looked out of the window. When Aretha was a student, Cassinia was her instructor. What? Joyce's eyes sparkled. Teacher and student love? I like it. So how did they get together? A chaste teacher and a beautiful student. During class he will teach math, and after class he will, teehee, oh my gosh. Joyce straightened her expression. What I mean is, they have a great love that can overcome any obstacles. So where are they now? Do they live in seclusion together? I don't know. I really want to meet that girl who became a god. Joyce murmured. Thinking of Sean's words, she looked around in disappointment and asked another question. Can I try the element test you talked about? Sean answered softly. He subtly glanced at her eager expression. His eyes had a glimmer of tenderness that he was oblivious to. Have you heard? What? The king of Seddon is so arrogant. He says that their princess is Seddon's treasure, but Princess Isabella has lived in the palace for a few days and our king has not summoned her even once. The king just wants to demoralize them. How can a princess of a small country like Seddon deserve the greatest king of Carnia? I heard that the princess has been unable to sit still for a long time and has gone to seek the king several times. Unfortunately, she has been turned away each time. How is she the most beautiful princess out there? I think a small country like Seddon has never seen the world. If she really was a great beauty, then how could a man be willing to turn her down several times? According to the plot, Princess Isabella should receive a grand welcome when she comes to the palace since she is the female lead. That is how extravagant things were in the otome manga. Or does the great demon dragon like to play this kind of back and forth? Joyce discreetly opened the curtain and looked at the people who had passed by the carriage. Then, she turned back to look at Sean next to her. But then she thought back to how Sean defended the great demon dragon and looked away awkwardly. The carriage passed through a dense forest that was inhabited by magical beasts and spirits before they finally arrived at the legendary School of Magic at dusk. Joyce was impressed by the magnificent college with the mysterious aura in front of her. She stood next to the parked carriage and looked up in wonder at the majestic building behind a wall. A warm and dim light came from the college accompanied by the faint chattering of the students. How do we get in? Do we sneak in? Joyce turned around and asked in a low voice, but she was already rubbing her hands in anticipation. Sean got out of the carriage and stared at how she was about to jump up the wall. His thick eyebrows frowned. We go in here. He slowly walked into the college under the astonished eyes of Joyce. Joyce saw how he was about to get further away, so she quickly caught up and followed him. She carefully observed the students who occasionally glanced at them, and grabbed the corner of his sleeve, albeit a little nervous. Sean had an imposing aura that made others timid. Most of these students had just entered the school recently, and even if they did not know who Sean was, they still had a bit of involuntary awe when they came across him. When he sensed her actions, Sean's cold expression involuntarily held back a little. Is it fine for us to just walk in like this? Right now she was on her own. Oh wait, there was the knight next to her. Joyce remembered the strange magic that Sean had used. She asked guiltily, won't we be discovered? His chilling eyebrows slightly relaxed, and his eyes accidentally glanced at the fingers that were on the hem of his sleeve. Put away your fangs. Upon hearing this, Joyce quickly covered her mouth. Sean seemed to be in a good mood. He slowed down a little and spoke for the first time without thinking. The second and third year students have gone out for training with their instructors at this time. Right now, most of the students in the school are first years. If we are careful, then we won't be discovered. Joyce nodded her head seriously. Where are we going now? To a classroom first? Or, I am going to see an old friend first. An old friend? Yeah. Sean had taken her to the college, but she saw that they were almost outside of the college's territory. Joyce looked at the fireflies between the towering trees and shadows around her, and grabbed his sleeve more tightly. What is this place? Before Joyce could finish talking, birds in the forest suddenly made a startling cry. She embraced his arm and buried her head into his chest. What is it? Her sudden movement made Sean freeze. Before he could answer, Joyce poked her head out of his chest and looked behind Sean curiously. What appeared in front of them in the forest was a tombstone covered with fireflies. Joyce gasped and buried her head into Sean's chest again. Sean patted her on the head. Are all vampires as timid as you? Joyce quickly raised her head. Who is timid? Sean's eyes contained some amusement. He turned around to look at the tombstone that had scared Joyce. It was my carelessness, he said. The owner of this tombstone is the friend I want to see. Joyce slightly froze. Sean walked to the ancient-looking tombstone and lightly touched the writing with his finger. Long time no see, Miguel, my friend. It was hard for Joyce to imagine someone like Sean calling a person my friend. She did not come near, as if she did not want to disturb the peaceful moment. She looked down at Sean squatting next to the tombstone. Suddenly, she saw something flash by in the shadows of the trees around her. Joyce's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Sean, who was whispering something to the tombstone, and walked cautiously towards the swaying bushes close away. She lightly pushed away the bushes to look behind it, only to see a young girl hiding there. The young girl did not expect to be discovered. There was a trace of alarm in her eyes that dashed along with the firefly. But when Joyce got a closer look at the girl's face, she took a deep breath. At that very moment, a strong wind arrived in the forest, and the girl became even more frightened. She looked at Joyce pleadingly, and carefully, quietly made an action. Joyce did not scream, but the girl suddenly slipped and fell straight into a black hole hidden in the bushes. Before Joyce realized what was going on, she had reached out to grab the falling girl. However, the momentum from the fall was so great that she followed the girl into the black hole. Chapter 12. Joyce wrapped her arms around the falling girl. She protected her carefully. Together they fell down the dark hole until they landed on the ground. Joyce stood up and helped the girl to her feet. Are you all right? As a vampire, Joyce possessed strong night vision, but the girl in front of her did not. She fumbled around, pulled out a candle, and lit it. The cave was dark, but now it glowed with a layer of warm light. Joyce stared at the girl's face with surprise. The girl's face flushed. Thank you. The girl lowered her head. Her soft voice made Joyce's pulse quicken. The girl raised her head cautiously. Seeing Joyce's eyes still fixed on her, she looked down again, shy. Have we met? Joyce observed the girl carefully. Using the faint candlelight, she confirmed the girl's identity. You don't know me, but I know you. Joyce's tone carried pleasant surprise. You are Aretha, right? The girl's hands clenched. She had not expected this. She tried to pull her hands away awkwardly. You have mistaken me for someone else. But Joyce insisted. I have seen your statue so many times in the city. I would not mistake you for someone else. The young girl lowered her eyes dejectedly. I am not really that Aretha. Joyce hesitated, but she looked at the girl again and again. She was certain she had not made a mistake. How could anyone in the world look exactly the same as the former god of light? The young girl looked into the cave using the faint light. A trace of surprise flashed through her eyes, and she walked deeper into the dark cave. Where are you going? Joyce hurried to catch up. The young girl pressed her finger against her lip. Seeing that Joyce understood and remained silent, she grabbed the candle tighter and whispered, "This passage should lead to the School of Magic." Joyce considered the direction of the school and nodded solemnly. "Are you going to the School of Magic? Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No." The girl pursed her lips and walked forward with the flickering candle. "I just want to go to the School of Magic. Today is the last day for new students to sign up." Joyce felt speechless. New students sign up. But you are the god of light. Why do you need to sign up as a new student? I am not her. The girl looked down, her eyes gloomy. Why do you all think I am her? You all. Joyce grasped her meaning. Who else is there? Is it the man who just chased you? Who is that man? Joyce did not see anyone in the forest, but the aggressive aura of the wind signaled danger. It chilled her skin. We have to move faster and get to the element test before he knows about it. The girl frowned, reluctant to mention the person's name. I have to pass the element test in order to stay in the School of Magic. The element test. Joyce expressed surprise. Are you really going to study in the School of Magic again? Why? The young girl did not answer for a long time. Joyce wanted to say something to ease the atmosphere, but the girl spoke in a soft, determined voice. I want to rely on myself to learn magic, not through the shadow of someone else. Joyce turned her head and looked at the girl with surprise. At this moment, a light of hope shone in the girl's expression. Joyce rubbed her eyes, and everything returned to normal. She was a girl with a dream. Joyce sighed. The girl was not like her. Joyce experienced curiosity about magic, but that was all. She wondered how the element test worked and what the School of Magic was like. This trip was a sudden adventure. She followed the young girl through the deep cave until they came to a narrow cellar. The girl's eyes lit up, and she hurried to open the door of the cellar. After making sure no one stood around, she turned and held out her hand. Let us go. Joyce reached out and took the girl's hand. Who are you? You are not from the school. Someone broke into the School of Magic. As they moved through the cellar, they ran into students who began to shout without listening to any explanations. Joyce regained her senses first. She pulled the girl around the students and rushed into the dense forest surrounding the school. Joyce moved fast. Soon, they were far away from the students. The girl blew out the candle, and they sprinted the entire way. When they finally lost the students, they stopped at the corner of a long hallway, gasping for breath. The young girl looked around the strange surroundings. Do you know where the element test is? Of course not. Joyce answered in a matter-of-fact tone. Joyce followed the girl's gaze to the place in front of them. What is this place? As they looked suspiciously at the dormant building in the middle of the night, a noise occurred behind them. This way. I saw them running this way. Joyce and the girl glanced at each other. They opened the window in the long hallway and went through it at the same time. It looks like. The girl did not dare to light a candle and used the faint moonlight to look at the magnificent and mysterious place. Like a library, bookshelves surrounded Joyce. The voices of the students chasing them drifted from behind. She landed her eyes on the stairs to the side. Let us go up and have a look. They walked up the stairs carefully. Suddenly, the girl's eyes fixed on the bookshelf under the stairs, and her heart began to beat faster. Hurry up. Joyce went from the second floor to the third. Sounds of students echoed. They reached the area where Joyce and the girl had gone. She sped up on the third floor, but bumped into a barrier. Damn it. What is this? The girl snapped out of it because of Joyce's voice. She pushed her hands against the invisible barrier. In a flash, it turned into fireflies and dispersed, and the barrier disappeared. Joyce looked at the girl next to her. They had no time to discuss what happened. They heard footsteps behind them coming up to the third floor. The barrier returned after they passed. They bolted warily along the empty third floor of the library. Aretha. The girl froze. She stared at the dark bookshelf at the end as if something called her name. Why are you not moving? Joyce stopped and grabbed her hand. Did you hear? Someone. The young girl's voice sounded dazed. Cassinio. When Joyce spoke Cassinio's name, the girl regained control. It is not him, but this voice is very familiar. The girl regained her composure. Let us go. They stopped speaking and ran. In their hurry, the girl collided with the side of a bookshelf. It shook, but did not fall. However, a book fell to the ground. The handwriting emitted a beautiful light. It guided her to read it. This journal contained an ancient marking. She picked it up and opened it carefully. Magic is to be explored. It is not a tool that can be imprisoned in books. The writing boasted how a person's inherent magic could be improved, but these words gave her a sense of familiarity. The girl's heart skipped a beat, and she flipped through the journal to the end. Man can never refuse a gift from the gods. Just as when love arrives. Just as when death opens the door. Cassinio. She gasped. This is. Joyce used the moonlight to read the small words on the last page. She covered her lips, giggling, as if she knew what was going on. She questioned, what is this? A love journal. The young girl's face turned scarlet. At this moment, an elegant sparrow flew in through the window. Joyce and the girl glanced at each other. Then, Joyce took the girl's hand and dashed through the dark, empty floor. They stopped when they found a secluded corner between some bookshelves. Joyce gasped for breath and peeked behind her. Oh, damn it. Why do I need to run away with you? I am sorry. The young girl's voice carried guilt and nervousness. Oh, it is all right. Do not worry about it. Joyce grinned. Did he bully you? If he bullies you, then beat. You cannot beat him. You are right to run away from him. The girl looked at her, bewildered, but nodded obediently. Anyway, thank you. While they talked, the moon's swaying shadow among the trees outside accumulated into dark clouds. The window closed, but they felt a faint breeze flow through the books. "Why is there a wind?" Joyce murmured. Before she could finish, the lights in the library lit at once. In the flickering light and shadows, she saw a slender, tall figure. "Run!" Joyce grabbed the girl and ran. They ran frantically, but the footsteps behind them followed lightly, slowly, and closely. Just after making a sharp turn around a bookshelf, Joyce bumped into a man. Ah! The panic from being forced to stop made her yelp. As soon as she looked up, the man in front of her made her freeze. "Why is it you?" Sean frowned and looked disapprovingly at the way she was out of breath. He began to say something, but his eyes focused on the girl whom Joyce pulled closely behind her. "How?" His eyes held astonishment, but Joyce had already grabbed his hand. "There is no time to explain. Someone. Oh, he is violent. Chasing us. Run." Before Sean could react, Joyce pulled him along and ran forward. But the three of them did not run far when the person following them seemed to have lost his patience. He solidified into a figure more dazzling than the statue. Casinio. Without needing an explanation, Joyce guessed the identity of the man. "Sean, I cannot believe that you have not improved after all these years. How can you fool around with a vampire?" The man pushed them aside with his eyes, which landed on the girl behind them. His frosty eyes took on a glint of gentleness. "The game is over. My little girl, it is time for you to come with me." Chapter 13. The game is over. "My little girl, it is time for you to come with me." Sean's eyebrows furrowed. His gaze traced Casinio's line of sight to the girl blocked by Joyce. She was only 17 or 18 years old. Her eyes held a confused and stubborn expression, vaguely like the little girl who first came to the school. She was Aretha. Yet, she did not resemble Aretha. Casinio approached them step by step, stopping directly in front of them. Joyce thrust her arms out to protect Aretha before he could speak. "Even if you are the god of light, you cannot bully a little girl." Casinio raised an eyebrow at her words. He examined the vampire who stood before him. "Little vampire, did anyone tell you that as a vampire, you must let a god pass when you see him?" The man possessed a naturally oppressive air. The aura surrounding him felt harsh and distinct from the energy that typically radiated from Sean. Joyce composed herself, refusing to retreat from the pressure. She stayed firm. She wanted to come to the School of Magic. "You cannot take her away." Casinio looked surprised. He glanced past Joyce to Aretha. "Are you not already at the School of Magic? Now that the visit is over, it is time for you to return with me." Aretha clenched Joyce's sleeve, mustering her courage. "She is not a vampire. She is my friend. Also, I did not come here to visit the School of Magic. I came here to study magic." Casinio's eyes flickered with shock. He frowned. "The magic here is not for you. If you want to learn magic, you can follow me." "No, I want to stay at the School of Magic, and I am not going back with you." Aretha looked up at the god towering above her. "I appreciate you for saving me and taking care of me for so many years, but I am not her. I am not anyone but myself." Casinio studied the little girl. He remained silent for a while, as if he wondered how to coax such a stubborn and rebellious girl. He stepped forward, reaching out to push Joyce aside. Sean, who had stood quietly from the beginning, blocked his hand. "After all these years, you still like to force people to do what they are unwilling to do, Casinio." Joyce felt the ends of her hair tremble with fear when Casinio raised his hand. Sean stopped him just as she began to consider begging for mercy. She breathed a sigh of relief, but then a realization hit her. Sean was a small, weak, and helpless knight. Long Aotian had confiscated his sword. How could they escape from a god when he was as physically weak as a chicken? Joyce sighed, her nerves fraying again. Casinio's eyes sharpened. "What are you talking about?" Joyce quickly pulled Sean behind her. She looked at the dangerous god and explained hopelessly. "I think God of Light. Did you not hear her say she did not want to go back? Since she likes the School of Magic, why do you not just let her stay there? If she is going to learn magic, why not learn it at the School of Magic? We are all friends here, so there is no need to be offended or annoyed. Do you not think so?" Casinio stared at the two people she had pulled behind her. His face darkened. "Friends, that is right." Joyce stood in the middle, forcing herself to be brave. "Did she not say that she is not the Aretha you are looking for?" "I do not believe it either, but it does not matter whether I believe it or whether you believe it. What matters is who she thinks she is." Casinio frowned and looked over at the little girl. Aretha met his gaze. She patted Joyce on the shoulder and walked around her with determination. "She is right. I am not the one you are looking for. I want to go to the School of Magic. I want to study hard through my own efforts instead of relying on your help." Casinio stared at the persistent girl without a word. Joyce put on a smile amid the standoff, trying to persuade him. "Since she wants to come to the School of Magic, you can let her go. In the worst case, you can go with her. Is this not the place where you first met? Also, there is another option. You can go back to school as a teacher and teach her again." Casinio raised an eyebrow. "Do you want to go to the School of Magic?" Aretha nodded earnestly. "Then you can." Casinio replied immediately. He leaned down, meeting Aretha's surprised gaze. "But I have put up with it for so long. It is finally time to open the gift, and now you have to start all over again. How are you going to make it up to me in the future?" His deep, gruff voice sounded by her ear, and Aretha's face blushed. Joyce watched how intimate they were. Seeing her gawking, Sean pulled her back with a darkened face. "It is a pity that instructors like you are not welcome at the School of Magic." Casinio looked up, his eyes filled with happiness. "Who said I am going to be an instructor?" Sean's eyes narrowed. "What? They are over there." The loud voice from the students reached the third floor. I saw them go to the third floor. Cassinio walked past Aretha to Sean, his height gradually shrinking. The cold ruthlessness accumulated through age faded, stained with a tinge of juvenility, on the young man. Joyce guessed what happened and sucked in a cold breath. You would not be thinking of doing. In a flash, Cassinio became a teenager of the same age as Aretha. He smiled. I need an acceptance letter. Sean looked like he had heard something inconceivable. His eyes lowered with a hint of coldness. A place like the School of Magic is not suitable for a god to study. Cassinio smiled and turned his eyes to Joyce. You still have not made the time to introduce her. Who is this little vampire? Sean clenched his fist. Joyce looked at the smiling man whose eyes remained fixed on her, but she felt tense. She was so tense that she forgot to move until Aretha stood in front of her. Who are you saying is a little vampire? Cassinio was taken aback, then smiled gently. What is the matter, my little girl? Aretha paused, then turned to ask Joyce, what is your name? Joyce, she replied in a low whisper. Joyce is not a vampire. She is my friend. Aretha insisted. A friend whose name you have just learned? Cassinio had a mischievous smile. How do you know she is not a vampire? I just know. Aretha pursed her lips, raised her chin, and said confidently. And when we were running together just now, she was gasping harder than I was. How could she be a vampire? Joyce stood rooted to the spot, unsure whether to be happy or sad. Well, you are right. Cassinio's voice carried a hue of amusement. He turned his gaze back on Sean and Joyce. If I can have a new identity, then I do not think I will remember seeing any vampires. Oh right, this is little Aretha's friend. What do you think, Sean? The instructor of the school had brought the students to the third floor by now. The sound of the instructor's murmuring curses disturbed the sweet dreams of the 4 students. If there is no one inside, then you will go and clean the toilet for a week. Joyce wanted to hide. As a vampire, she did not know how she would sneak out if someone from the School of Magic detected her. Cassinio smiled at Sean and took his time to ask, have you thought it over? As the sound of rushed footsteps neared, Sean's face sank. Joyce searched for a place to hide among the bookshelves. She hesitated as to whether she should grab Sean and run away, when he suddenly raised his hand. Joyce, who wanted to run away with him, felt her body changing and becoming smaller. This familiar feeling. You are doing it again. As Joyce cried out softly, she became a kitten again. Sean bent down and picked up the kitten who was so disheartened that she dropped to the ground on her butt. He said, okay. Cassinio smiled with certainty. The sound of the footsteps crossed the series of bookshelves and stopped in front of them. That is them. Several students pointed at them frantically. However, the instructor they had dragged over gasped after seeing who stood in front of him. He pulled the eager students back behind him, his drowsiness disappearing instantly. What are you doing here, Sean interrupted as he stroked the kitten's back. I have brought 2 people with me. Take them to see if they can be admitted into the school. These are your orders, of course. Sean interrupted him again. Go. Yes. The instructor replied in fear, while the students behind him looked at the 3 people in front of them in confusion. They broke into the 3rd floor of the library. Shut up. The instructor reprimanded in a low voice. You lot, go and clean all the toilets in the school. You are not allowed to sleep until you finish cleaning. They left the library in a frenzy, feeling wronged as they looked at the 3 people in front of them, unaware that they were supreme beings. Cassinio, who had cast a spell to make himself smaller, took the element test with Aretha. Their talents caused a stir throughout the school, and they were admitted together. Sean pushed the kitten down into his arms. He saw her earnest look and patted her on the head. The kitten retracted her head in pain and looked up at him skeptically. After they all leave, can I try the element test too? Sean looked down at her round eyes. If you want to learn magic, then I can teach you. Really? She raised her soft little paws and crept up to his collar. But are you not a knight? How can you still have magic? Are all knights so amazing? Sean spoke without realizing it. Just me. Then I must learn magic from you. Joyce happily made her next plans. After leaving Carnia, I can hide in Seddon. With magic, I can save myself a lot of work, but also. Sean's face turned cold again. When Joyce felt the air around her cooling, she heard his voice become heavy. Why do you want to leave? Joyce found a comfortable place in his arms and exclaimed naturally, to save your life, of course. Sean's expression cleared up a bit. He reached down and caressed the soft little head. His voice held a touch of tenderness. Joyce, although I will not leave with you, I can guarantee your safety in Carnia. He paused before adding, this is my promise. Chapter 14. Joyce felt a flare of doubt. It was not that she lacked faith in Sean, but this knight remained a male supporting character. He stood little chance against the overwhelming power of the male lead. If the great demon dragon truly found a reason to eliminate the vampires, no one could protect her. However, his heartbeat remained steady. It usually beat slightly faster, matching her own heart at a similar frequency. This hobby of yours is really unusual. Cassinio stepped down from the element test platform and glanced at the cat in Sean's arms. Although his face had changed into a youthful one, his expression still carried the same haughtiness. Sean raised a hand to block Joyce from looking at him. She is still young, and she becomes gullible and guileless just after drinking blood. Oh, a cat has a small appetite, so you turned her into a cat? Cassinio asked lightly. What are you talking about? Joyce grumbled, struggling to poke her head out of Sean's arms. I do not eat much. I already know how to control my appetite. Sean pushed her down into his arms again and said, if there is nothing else, you can leave. How did the best ice wizard in the School of Magic get reduced to only casting cat-changing magic? Before Sean could speak, Joyce poked her head out of his arms again. Even if you are a god, you cannot say that about the little knight. Little knight, Cassinio raised an eyebrow. Sean softened. Instead of arguing with Cassinio, he reached out and gently stroked the kitten's chin with his fingertips. Cassinio watched the movement of his fingers, a hidden joy gleaming in his gaze. Aretha tugged at his sleeve. You mustn't bully Joyce, she is my friend. Friend, Cassinio glanced back at Sean, and looked at his fingers again. Maybe cat-changing magic is good magic, do you not think, Aretha? Aretha looked puzzled by his remark. Sean carried the cat past them to the crystal ball for the element test. Cassinio looked away and turned to Aretha at his side. I am not bullying. I very much hope that the two of them can be together for a long time. Aretha eyed him suspiciously. She did not believe he would say something so kind. Cassinio offered no explanation. He neatly arranged the collar of her dress and said, Let us go, the teachers are waiting. Aretha watched as he walked away, and then turned to the man and cat in front of the crystal ball for the element test. She quickly ran to them. Sean paused. Joyce, Aretha called out, her face flushing scarlet. Joyce jumped out of Sean's arms and went down a few steps to Aretha's feet. Aretha squatted down next to her and said, I have to go first. Yes, Joyce nodded. Go, go. I will come back to see you when I am free. Aretha also nodded. She reached out and touched the soft fur on the back of the kitten. With wonder in her eyes, she declared with fondness, It is a deal. The girl and the cat whispered affectionately. Cassinio stood to one side, having moved to linger near Sean. With one eyebrow slightly raised, he watched Aretha, whose face beamed with astonishment as she played with the kitten. Sean looked at Cassinio, his annoyance evident. So she lost her immortality in the end. It is not important, Cassinio replied, his eyes carrying a careless smugness. Maybe losing her memory was also a good thing. What is important is not her memory, but that she will always fall in love with me, whether in the past, present, or future. Sean had long been accustomed to Cassinio's need to be lectured. He looked back at the girl and the cat nearby. You seem to be doing well now, and you have clearly received the blessing of the gods. Sean did not reply. He just watched Joyce say goodbye to Aretha before he stepped forward to pick her up again. Then, he heard Cassinio say, Be careful of the people around you. Sean paused slightly. He leaned down and took the reluctant kitten back into his arms. We should go too. After Joyce said goodbye to Aretha, she left the School of Magic with Sean. In the carriage on the way back, she leaned into Sean's chest and sighed with dejection. Sean looked down at the sighing kitten. What is it? Joyce snuggled into a comfortable position in his arms, buried her head, and said in a low voice, The actual ending of the story is that Aretha and Cassinio did not live happily ever after. Rather, Aretha lost her divinity, and also her immortality. Cassinio wanted to help her regain her divinity, but he found that she would not remember herself each time during that process. More importantly, no one knows what Aretha lost after she lost her divinity. I know. Sean's voice drew Joyce back to reality from the sadness she felt while recounting Aretha's tale. She tilted her head toward him. You know. Yes, Sean replied, looking out of the window. The carriage swiftly drove through the bright lights of the town, where there were two statues of the gods of light. Carnia will always remember its gods. The carriage slowly drove through the busiest part of the town. Joyce laid sleepily in Sean's arms, enjoying the rare tranquility. Sean's fingers stroked her back, making her drowsy. Right at that moment, a rift opened in the shadows of the trees, and sinister claws slashed down with a sudden gust of wind. Sean slowed his stroking and looked up, his eyes alert and cold. The carriage slowly came to a stop in the woods. Sean opened the door and found that the vampire who had been driving had disappeared without a trace. The kitten was still sleeping in his arms, unaware of the danger surrounding them. Something flew through the thicket. He wrapped the kitten in his jacket and warily tracked the shadow that flickered around him. Suddenly, the shadow attacked. It broke the stalemate and wrestled with him. Since Sean did not know the origin of the shadow, he did not dare to show his strength rashly. Just as he recognized something familiar about the movement, a stiff body was pushed toward him. Sean stepped aside. The vampire who had just been driving the carriage lay thrown upon the ground. In that moment of his opponent's distraction, the shadow took the opportunity to attack again. Sean did not sense the second strike. He could have avoided it by stepping to the side, but something felt wrong. He reached into his jacket and touched the fabric. It was empty. Joyce. Sean looked at the empty forest, his eyes as desolate and frigid as the tundra. He turned from the direction the shadow had disappeared and looked at the corpse of the discarded vampire. His eyes narrowed slightly as he approached the body to check for wounds. The vampire's neck had been snapped, but there were no other wounds on his body. There were no other wounds. Sean's concentration intensified. Vampires had reached the limit of their strength and speed, but their strongest asset was their immortality and recovery. To completely destroy a vampire, one had to dig out the heart, or cut off the head completely. If the neck had been only snapped, Sean's eyes gradually darkened. At that moment, the head of the dead body in front of him made a click sound. The broken head snapped back into place, followed by a painful cry from the once dead body. The vampire gasped for breath. In the middle of his uneven breathing, his eyes focused on Sean, and he gradually regained his senses. What happened? The vampire wheezed. Sean stood up. Without asking for clues about the shadow, he opened the carriage door and jumped inside quickly. Go back to the castle. The vampire stared in shock. He knew from looking around that they had been ambushed. Joyce was missing, and he struggled to recall the events of the attack. However, Sean's command pulled his attention away. Sean possessed a special power that seemed to make anyone around him follow and surrender to him. The vampire jumped to the front seat. He was already driving the carriage in the direction of the castle before he even realized it. After driving for a long time, he was able to think more clearly. Why did he listen to the order of the man who was held hostage in the castle? But Sean was also right. The most important thing now was to hurry back to the castle and unite everyone to find Joyce. As if he had finally convinced himself, the vampire reinstated his solemn look and drove the carriage faster toward the castle. Joyce slept soundly, like she was in a long dream. She opened her eyes to find that she was in a vaguely familiar place. She was still a cat, but she was locked up in a small iron cage. Joyce was so startled that her drowsiness disappeared in a flash. Who kidnapped me? Where is Sean? Does the kidnapper know who I am? If he does, it cannot be the cronies of the old demon dragon. Is it possible that my life, which I have worked so hard to extend, is going to come to an end like this? Joyce paced restlessly around the cage. She reached out with her difficult cat paws to try to unlock the latch, but failed several times. She slammed into the cage in frustration and fear. Where is Sean? Does he know I have been kidnapped? When will he come to save me? Just then, someone pushed open the door to the completely dark room. Joyce rushed to look out and saw someone she never thought would do this. This explained why the room felt vaguely familiar. It was the room in the castle that she had never set foot in. The person standing in front of her was Nicholas Long Aotian. Chapter 15. Long Aotian glanced at her and walked to the side of the table. Joyce swallowed the words she almost blurted out. She watched him from behind, trembling. Why had Long Aotian tied her up? Did he know who she was? Had he figured out that she was not the real Joyce? Joyce stood frozen, unable to speak. Her eyes remained fixed on Long Aotian's back. The kidnapping made no sense. She abandoned her usual unrestrained manner, lay down in the cage, and focused on the person before her. What was he doing? If he knew that she was not the original Joyce, would he think that she was a spy sent by the great demon dragon? With that, Joyce imagined all kinds of scenarios in which Long Aotian tortured her to get a confession. Her soft kitten fur stood on end. Although his back was turned, she pictured him choosing a torture weapon with a sinister smile. Long Aotian sorted through his supplies and turned to look at her again. Fear spiked in her heart. She withdrew to the corner of the cage and watched his every step. He looked down at the trembling kitten and opened the cage door. She was a cat now. With a cage like this, how could she escape? If Long Aotian knew that she was not the real Joyce and intended to kill her to silence her, who could save her? He reached into the cage. Joyce shrank back in horror. She watched his hand reach out to grab and pull her out. Where was Sean? Long Aotian grabbed at her several times, but she evaded him. He lost his patience and frowned. His large hands blocked every point of retreat. He grabbed her back and lifted her out of the cage. Joyce made no sound. Instinct and panic drove her to struggle desperately. Her soft paws possessed sharp claws. She scratched the back of his hands and wrists. Blood oozed out and stained her paws. Joyce froze. The scent of blood hung heavy in the air. Her breathing quickened. A hidden thirst clamored to break through the prison of her mind. This feeling was familiar. At the bottom of her heart, she longed not for the blood in front of her, but for the blood she had consumed before. The thought of that blood made her feverish. She was hungry. She craved the sweet and addictive taste of Sean's blood. Her thoughts settled. Now was not the time to think of that. She needed to know what Long Aotian planned to do. Was she in danger? She tried to think logically to strengthen her resolve. Long Aotian lifted the object in his other hand. It was a cat wand. The straight-faced man shook the wand, and a little bell rang softly. What was he doing? Did he want to use this to trick her into a confession? She had no hope for his intelligence. She retracted her gaze. How could she like a cat wand? What a joke. He checked the wand, confused, then threw it aside. He grabbed her with one hand and picked up another item from the table. Joyce watched as he brought it closer. It was a piece of dried fish. What on earth was he doing? How could he think such a clumsy trick with a cat wand and dried fish could extract information? As his immediate superior, Joyce felt that the villain's intelligence in the book warranted a kindergarten grade. Sensing the kitten's disdain, Long Aotian looked at the fish skeptically. He frowned at the kitten. Don't be picky about food. He spoke with a serious expression. Joyce adopted a wait-and-see attitude. She swallowed saliva, keeping a watchful eye on his every move. Since you don't like any of this, I can only. His solemn expression collapsed. He lifted a piece of dark, heavy fabric. Joyce felt a bad omen. She struggled to escape. Under the fabric sat a castle tower that occupied a large space. It was built for cats to play with. Joyce stared blankly. Long Aotian introduced it with excitement. How is it? Do you like it? Joyce turned her head to look at him. A sudden, absurd idea struck her. Maybe Long Aotian did not know who she was. Maybe he did not want to blackmail Sean. Maybe he was just. Since the last time I saw you, I really wanted to have a cat. I didn't meet any I got along with though. That night didn't treat you well either. He threw you away, but now you can follow me forever. Joyce sighed. She should not have overestimated his intelligence. What villain accomplishments? What dreams of saving the primogeniture? What kidnapping and blackmail? Long Aotian simply wanted a cat. Joyce stopped struggling. She could not avoid the scent of the blood on Long Aotian's hands and on her paws. She listened to him fantasize about life with a cat. She felt exhausted. How could she be kidnapped by such a stupid subordinate? When would Sean's magic lose its effect? She missed his blood. She leaned over his hand indifferent to his prattling. Long Aotian noticed the bloodstained paws and decided, okay, kitty, I'll take you for a bath first. Joyce stiffened. She struggled to slip away, but he held her fast. He walked toward the bathtub. She did not want a bath. I know cats don't like bathing. Long Aotian tightened his grip and stated calmly, but you must take a bath. Joyce struggled desperately, wanting to curse this fool. Even if I take a bath, I don't want you to help me. Did Sean find out that I'm missing yet? If he didn't make me like this, I wouldn't be here. I don't want this pervert helping me. Just as she howled curses on Sean from the bottom of her heart, the room door slammed open. The face she had been thinking about appeared at the door. Sean. Long Aotian never expected him so soon. He panicked and tried to hide the kitten. She bit his finger, jumped down, and rushed into Sean's arms. Sean bent down and picked up the kitten. His tense expression eased. When he saw the blood on her paws, his gaze locked onto Long Aotian again. The kitten reached out with soft paws and stroked his finger before he could go on a rampage. It was as if she told him not to worry. Sean looked away and walked out the door. Wait a minute. Long Aotian tried to stop him. Sean did not stop because of him, but he halted outside the door. If you want to borrow a cat, you don't have to go to so much trouble. Long Aotian was shocked. You mean you are willing to? Sean interrupted him coldly. Personal things will not be lent out. He ignored Long Aotian's stunned face and left. Joyce had used up her energy. She watched Sean as he walked through the shadows of the swaying trees outside the castle hallway. She looked back at the fingers stroking her. While deep in thought, she nestled in his arms, bared her fangs, and bit his fingertip. Sean returned from his musings at the tickling pain. He looked down at his arms. The kitten greedily sucked the blood. Joyce hung her head guiltily. She held onto his finger, afraid her food would be taken away. Sean stopped walking. After the kitten realized he would not take his finger away, she grabbed it and happily fed. He did not stop her from eating his blood. The sucking softened his heart, and a layer of fog laced his eyes. I lost something and got it back. The feeling was subtle. He leaned down and, before he realized it, kissed the soft, furry head. At that moment, the kitten turned into a maiden again with a flash. Her face was a picture of confusion, and he had no time to take back the kiss on her forehead. Chapter 16. The sudden kiss surprised both Joyce and Sean. Sean, having just kissed the kitten, and the woman, who had suddenly transformed back into a vampire, stood in shock. Time seemed to stop. Only the occasional swaying shadows of trees outside the windows proved that the moment continued. Outside the window, the piercing cause of sleepless crows pulled Joyce back to her senses. A doubtful blush rose on her face. Sean kissed me. Sean kissed me. Why did Sean kiss me? Countless thoughts coursed through her mind, but Sean finally collected himself. His little peck left him flustered, and he attempted to create distance between them. Joyce placed her hands on his head. Sean stiffened. His eyes filled with surprise as she held his head closer. This kiss landed firmly on her forehead. You kissed me, she shouted excitedly, fearing he would deny his actions. She refused to let go of the definite evidence. Sean clumsily pushed her away and retreated a few steps. Joyce covered the place he had just kissed, her eyes sparkling. You just kissed me. No. Sean remained so stiff that he could not look away. Joyce noticed the barely visible blush on his face and leaned closer to examine the unnatural hue of pink on his cheeks. Oh, little knight, you are blushing, right? Sean swatted her hand away and tried to walk around her. In a flash, Joyce blocked his path. You have already kissed me. You are not trying to go back on it, are you? Sean's breathing stagnated. He turned his head and whispered, no. That is good. Joyce's eyes curved. Now that you have kissed me, it confirms that you are determined to marry and live in the castle. I understand your intentions. Sean stared at Joyce. She cleared her throat and picked out what she thought was the most important thing. You know that I am a vampire, and things will not end well with us together. I do not want to disregard your intentions, so let us elope. Yes, elope. Joyce's eyes shone. With this long-term meal ticket by her side, she would never have to worry about starving to death wherever she traveled. Even if she spent all of Sean's money one day, she could rely on his sexual charms, or rather, his ability. She would not starve to death. She grabbed his hands more excitedly. Let us elope. She felt that Sean was more than a long-term meal ticket. Even if they encountered danger in the future, she had seen Sean's strength. His presence guaranteed her personal safety forever. She grabbed Sean's arm more tightly and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Wake up, Sean said. No. Joyce could not hear the displeasure in his voice. She still happily said, you just kissed me, and you need to be responsible for me. That does not count. Sean dodged and looked away. Joyce saw that he was shy and gladly approached him. It does not count. Yeah. Then what do you think counts? At least. Sean stuttered but suddenly froze. Joyce stood on her tiptoes and landed a kiss on his lips. The kiss acted like a spell. Sean stood rooted to the spot. The morning air carried dew, the sun rose, and the area held an earthy scent. His gaze fixed on the face close to his for a long time. His breath and heartbeat seemed to still at the same time. Joyce's heart beat like a drum. It was the first time she kissed someone. She did it recklessly. When she realized what happened, she quickly increased the distance between them. How about this? Even though her heart beat fast, Joyce held her chin up calmly. I will be responsible for you. Something like this did not make much of a difference to Joyce, but she still felt embarrassed. Sean did not answer. When Joyce prepared to ask again, she saw him rushing out of the corridor with a red face. He left her standing there alone. She watched his direction, but no one remained. She scratched her head skeptically. No way. How can he be so shy? I have not even. Joyce did not finish. The sensation on her lips from the forced kiss returned. Her face covered with a crimson glow. She touched the spot where the kiss landed. The blush on her cheeks spread to the tips of her ears. She looked around and quickly ran into a room, while covering her burning face. In the following days, the vampires methodically followed orders to farm. Joyce followed Long Aotin to supervise the work. Whenever she could not see Sean, she gave the work to Long Aotin, so that she could happily go find the little knight. Sean seemed to have been avoiding her lately. However, Joyce did not feel discouraged. She followed him every day in a good mood, like she played hide and seek. Little knight, walk slower. Little knight, why do you blush when you see me? Oh, little knight, where are you going? Sean finally could not stand it and stopped walking. Do you have nothing to do? Of course not. Seeing that he finally spoke, Joyce hurried up to him. I am doing the most important thing in my life right now. Oh, wait for me. Joyce saw that he had quickened his pace again, so she ran after him, giggling. Sean saw her catching up. When she eventually reached his side, he threw the farm tools at her. Since you have nothing to do, you might as well go to work with your subordinates. Joyce happily looked at the farm tools in her hand, and then caught up with him again. Are there any rewards? Like a little knight is an award. Joyce's voice carried volume. It drew low laughter from the vampires who overheard them. Sean's stern face flushed again, and he automatically reached out with his hand to cover her smiling lips. Joyce, with her lips covered by him, felt stunned. Then, her face filled with a smile again. Little knight, you are shy again. Her moving thin lips against his finger, as she spoke, felt like a soft kitten tickling his hand. It also tickled the tip of his heart. Sean withdrew his hand. Someone in the field nearby called her name, and Joyce did not stay much longer. She waved to Sean and quickly ran to the vampires, who seemed to have found inner peace in farming. Sean looked at her cheerful figure from a distance. He stood in the corridor for a long time. He only withdrew his gaze after he collected his thoughts. He walked into the castle without saying a word. By the time the sun climbed high into the sky, most of the vampires had returned to the castle. Meanwhile, Joyce continued to busy herself in the fields. Long Aotian listened to his subordinates' reports on the farming progress, while he watched Sean stand in front of the window. He cleared his throat, and the vampire beside him who reported his work immediately fell silent. It is getting late. I have got more work to do. Knight, go and get Her Highness back. Sean felt surprised when he heard that. He turned and looked at Long Aotin in the eye, then at the busy figure in the fields. Joyce worked in the field when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned her head and cried out in surprise, Little Knight, there you are. Yeah, Sean answered flatly. I am going back. Joyce rushed to stop him and ecstatically presented her discovery. Look, this is a watermelon seed. When summer comes, you can eat sweet and cold watermelon. Okay. Joyce looked at his unchanged expression and asked with high expectations, will you like it? Then, her expression suddenly turned coy. What about the watermelon grower? Hey, do not refuse to answer. Joyce smiled and took his arm. You kissed me. Sean felt a headache. The entire castle knows about it now. Joyce's eyes curved as she looked at him. So you are still shy? No. I kissed you too. Joyce patted him on the shoulder. So we are even, and I will be responsible for you. Do not worry. Sean did not know how to respond. No need. Do not fight it, little knight. Joyce smiled and leaned closer. You like me, do not you? Sean did not answer. He simply turned and walked in the direction of the castle. Joyce swiftly ran after him, and she turned to him once she reached his side. She peeked at his expression as she spoke. Little knight, you have been avoiding me for so long. It is not because you are shy, right? Why are you avoiding me? Sean still did not answer. Is it something I did badly? Joyce asked and gently tugged at the corner of his shirt. Little knight, I like you, and I said I would be responsible. Her strength could not make him waver as he walked, but he stopped and looked at the vampire. You like me? Joyce blushed from the way he asked the question. She quietly looked at Sean's stoic expression, and nodded awkwardly and carefully. Sean raised his hand. He put his long, white fingertip to his thin lips and bit it. The move stunned Joyce. Her breathing stopped. A drop of blood seeped down Sean's fingertips. It stained his lips, and Joyce's eyes tinged with scarlet. She approached him in a daze and gently stood on her tiptoes to kiss his lips like a man bound by a curse. Her tongue brushed his lip. The sweet, deep, red liquid flowed into her lips. Her vampire thirst for blood came rushing at this moment. Her arms gently wrapped around his neck, and her farmer hat knocked off the top of her head. She collided with his lips. The kiss felt like the thirst. His lips possessed a softness that felt different, and the blood on his lips tasted like the best fine wine. Joyce's eyes became hazy, but then she heard Sean's low voice. So what you like is my blood. Chapter 17. So what you like is my blood. Joyce remained blurry as Sean turned around. By the time she regained her composure, his figure had already disappeared at the end of the castle corridor. Joyce sat dejectedly on the steps, her head resting between her hands. She stared at the floor. Long Aotin walked past her. He paused, then approached her. Joyce offered a grateful smile. Thank you for comforting me. I am fine. I did not expect to be the most reliable. Long Aotin frowned. He unrolled a scroll in his hand and cleared his throat. These are the receipts for the seeds and fertilizer purchased over the past few days. Additionally, the vampires patrolling the town report that vampires attacked humans on the periphery again. I examined the situation. The bloodless bodies appear to have been deliberately disguised to look like a vampire attack. Someone is trying to provoke a war between the vampires and the royal family of Carnia. The rare emotional feeling in Joyce's eyes disappeared. She knew that Long Aotin could never be underestimated. She restrained her emotions in an instant. I will leave these matters to you, she said. Long Aotin stared at her, but he hesitated. Does your highness not want to check on such important things personally? It is because it is important that it should be handed over to the one I trust the most, Joyce said. She patted his shoulder. Xiao Long, you have great potential. Take this as an opportunity to use it. Go on. Long Aotin looked at her blankly. A host of complicated emotions flitted through his eyes. He opened his mouth, then stopped. Joyce stood there, thinking about how she was a good leader who trusted and motivated her subordinates. She patted Long Aotin on the shoulder again, preparing to contemplate life once more, when he grabbed her wrist. Joyce blinked. No need to thank me. Long Aotin shook his head. Your highness, I have said many times, do not call me that strange name. My name is Nicholas Long Aotin. Joyce rubbed her temple. She remained impressed by the intelligence of the villain. Your highness, Long Aotin continued, our plan to exchange bags of blood with the town might be delayed, because of the vampire incident. Joyce nodded. Humans were constantly in danger because of the vampire murders. No one would be willing to exchange blood for food with the vampires now. She stared at the floor. Have those humans already blamed this on us? Long Aotian nodded cautiously. Joyce felt frustrated. She deliberated over this problem. With the uncertainty of the great demon dragon and her impending departure, she had to face Sean's words. Does everyone think that vampires like blood? Joyce asked. She stared into the distance. She waited for Long Aotian to answer, though the question was meant for her own ears. Long Aotian scanned the area to ensure no one else was around. He hesitated before answering. Aren't we meant to like blood? Joyce put her hand to her forehead. You can withdraw. Long Aotian bowed and started leaving. He stopped, considering his next words. Although this is true, we also have other things we like that do not conflict with our love of blood. So we can have more things we like, such as farming, trying to eat human food, or raising small animals. You know what I mean. Joyce's eyes lit up. Yes. Since he thinks I like his blood, why do I not just stop drinking his blood? Long Aotin cleared his throat and grabbed Joyce before she could run away. Your Highness, what I mean is, can I have something very important to do now. We will talk about it when I come back. Joyce dashed away, leaving Long Aotin behind. Over the next few days, Joyce buried herself in the fields. There was an endless amount of things to do every day, and she avoided Sean every time she saw him. Her sensitivity and craving for blood intensified after going without it for a few days. When Joyce reached her limit, she wrapped a blanket around herself and stared at the empty ceiling. Long Aotin stood by her bed. He brought in several humans they had raised. They stood in a row. The blood vessels pulsed under their delicate skin. Joyce mastered the art of suppressing her cravings, but starvation stripped away her control. She pointed to a girl. The girl walked forward timidly. Joyce stared at her smooth neck. She felt tenser than ever. She leaned closer. She opened her mouth and prepared to bite. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned her head, panic rising. Sean stood outside the door. Joyce swallowed. What can I do for you? Nothing, Sean said. He leaned against the door, waiting. You can go on. The faint fragrance of his blood reached her. Joyce turned away. She would continue. She did not need his blood to live. She leaned closer to the girl. She opened her mouth and bit down. The copper taste of blood flooded her senses. She choked. She coughed violently and pushed the girl away from the bed. The blood was not like food. Her body rejected it. She could not taste anything when she ate, but she could distinguish the taste of blood. Joyce coughed. Tears welled in her eyes. I am giving up, she thought. The girl stood rooted to the spot. Sean walked up to them and waved his hand. The girl left the room in fear. Joyce recovered from her coughing fit. The strong sweet aroma surrounded her. Her fingers, cheeks, clothes, and sheets were stained with blood. The mattress dipped. Sean sat down beside her. Joyce held her breath. The sweet smell shattered her willpower. Sean did not speak. He sat quietly beside her. She felt dejected. She wanted to prove to Sean that she did not like him because of his blood, but she was in such a mess. Sean leaned closer. Does her blood taste good? Joyce did not answer. She stiffened as he leaned toward her. His voice was faint near her ear. It was low and slow. Better than mine? She turned her head to look at him. His words made her gaze land on his neck. She knew that under his fair skin was rich blood. It was pure and had a captivating flavor. Joyce gulped, her eyes fixed on that spot. She could not move. Sean took out a handkerchief and wiped the blood between her fingers and lips. His movements were serious and slow. After several days of hunger, delicious food was close. If she took a bite, all her efforts would be in vain. Why did you not come to me, he said. He wiped the blood on her lips and scratched a corner. If you want blood, why did you not come to me? Joyce brushed away his hands and stood up. It is not because of your blood that I like you. Sean's hands stopped. He retracted them and looked up. He stared at her. Then he stood up. What do you like about me? Joyce covered her lips. She did not want to discuss this. He stood behind her, waiting for an answer. You have many good points, she muttered. She buried her head low. For example, you are a righteous knight and you can do magic. You have a lot of money, so you have a lot of good points. Do not feel inferior. She covered her mouth and patted the stiff figure behind her on the shoulder. She wanted to keep Sean away from her. The man behind her did not speak for a long time. Joyce moved to create distance and looked back at him. Sean's face was dark. Joyce froze. She listed so many of his good points. Why did he seem unhappier? Her breathing stabilized. She broke away from the desire for blood. After she calmed, she hesitated and reassured him. Truthfully, you also have many other good points such as Long Aotian barged in. Your Highness Joyce, Princess Elizabeth is back after sending the message for us. He saw Sean in the room and became cautious. She said she is here to save her knight. Chapter 18. Joyce froze. She had sent the princess away, so why had she returned? Joyce covered her face with her hands. Isn't the princess's name Isabella? Long Aotian ignored the question. It did not matter to him what the princess was called. He turned his eyes to Sean. She said she is here to save her knight. Joyce turned her gaze to Sean, an awkward expression on her face. Sean looked back with calm eyes, appearing completely oblivious to the situation. Joyce looked away. Where is she? Long Aotian raised his chin haughtily. In case of deceit, I ignored her. Joyce sighed. Well done. She cleared her throat. Is there anything else? Long Aotian kept his villainous attitude. She fainted in front of the castle, so I finally had her brought in. I have locked her up in the dungeon. Joyce massaged her temples. A headache throbbed behind her eyes. Perhaps she lacked enough blood, or perhaps the princess's sudden arrival had caused this. She stood up and walked out of the room to remediate the situation. A spoiled princess lay locked in the dungeon. If the male lead and the second male lead discovered this, the entire castle might be annihilated. They had to send this instigating princess away. Joyce hurried to the dungeon. Princess Isabella lay haggardly inside. Panic gripped Joyce. Her soul nearly split in two. Princess Isabella woke up. Joyce hurried to her side. Princess Isabella, you have suffered. Sean and Long Aotian stood by in silence. Isabella sat up and looked around in fear. She did not seem to know what was happening. Joyce took charge. It is all my carelessness. I will have the carriage prepared to take you back. Isabella shook her head. No, Yes, I will take you back myself. Joyce turned to the stunned Long Aotian. Go and prepare the carriage. Isabella tried to interject. No, really. This time I am actually here. Her stomach gave a slight rumble. Her face reddened as she lowered her head. Joyce pulled Isabella to her feet. Look at me. How can I keep you here? You have not eaten yet. I will take you to get something to eat. The most we have is delicious food. Isabella refused. No need. Her face turned white at the thought of vampire food. Joyce dragged her out of the dungeon. They are cooking right now. I will show you. Isabella smelled the food and forgot her protests. Joyce pushed open the door to reveal a group of people preparing a meal. They bowed to Joyce and returned to their cooking. Isabella looked at them in surprise. They were not vampires. They were humans. These humans are. Isabella muttered. Joyce smiled. They are the people who stayed in the castle to provide us with blood. Isabella stared in disbelief. Rumors claimed vampires kept humans in captivity to drain their blood until they died. These people laughed and cooked instead. Joyce noticed the silence. I did not mean to enslave these people. I lack a sense of taste, and my cooking is bad, so I asked them to handle the kitchen. Isabella turned back to the cheerful group, then looked at the food. Joyce wanted to establish a positive image. I just heard from Xiao Long that you fainted. Are you tired? Sean and Long Aotian remained silent. Isabella blushed. I am not. Joyce thought of the strawberry cake. Do you like cakes? I just made a strawberry cake. Come and have a taste. If you want anything else, let me know. She took out the cake, but Sean stepped forward and pushed the plate back into the cupboard. Joyce watched the cake disappear. She stared at Sean in disbelief. Sean shut the cupboard door with a look of displeasure. Long Aotian frowned at Isabella. Since your highness is wary of us, you should not eat anything from here. Joyce realized Sean feared she would poison the princess. She wanted to gain the favor of the female lead, not kill her. Why did Sean's cautious expression make her feel so uncomfortable? Isabella paused, her hand reaching out and stopping. She looked at Sean, startled. I could not find anyone to save you, so I came back by myself. Joyce felt a twinge in her heart. Sean lived well here. She had not mistreated the knight. He did not need saving. Joyce addressed the princess. Princess should go back to the palace as soon as possible. It is where you can be safe. No, I cannot abandon you again. Isabella looked sincere. Joyce looked away. Let us not talk about this anymore. Let us have something to eat. She grabbed a pile of food and placed it before Isabella. Isabella looked overwhelmed and flushed as she said thank you. She is worthy of being the female lead of an otome manga. She is polite and cute. It is annoying. Joyce opened the cupboard again and retrieved the strawberry cake. She set it before Isabella. She caught Sean watching her and glared back. She made the cake herself. She would give it to whoever she wanted. Sean tried to stop her but failed. His face grew darker. Joyce sat down next to Princess Isabella. Taste it. Isabella looked at the pretty cake with anticipation. Thank you, please excuse me. Joyce felt her gloominess fade. She watched the female lead like an angel. Isabella took a mouthful of cake. What do you think? Isabella exclaimed. It is delicious. Did you make this? But vampires do not have any sense of taste. Yeah. Joyce smiled. It is the first time I have made it too. Everything else I have made is not delicious because I do not have a sense of taste, but the cake is easy. It is great that you like it. It was her first time making it in this body. That was not a lie. I like it. Isabella smiled widely. Joyce felt she had earned a trump card. Even if the great demon dragon caught her later, the princess might plead for her life because of this cake. She looked at the princess with anticipation. After the princess finishes eating, I can send her away. Thunder crashed outside the castle. Joyce looked out the window. Dark clouds loomed. A lightning flash illuminated Sean's livid expression. Joyce shuddered. Why is Sean looking at me like that? Is it because of Princess Isabella? This must be the strength of the female lead. She could make the people around her fall in love with her. Sean could not escape such a rule. Wait. Does that mean Sean and I have not grown to be lovers yet, and I have already developed into a romantic rival? This realization hit Joyce. She almost forgot that Princess Isabella could not return to the palace because of the storm. Joyce dragged her tired body back to her room. She entered the dark space and sensed that something was wrong. Joyce froze. Her eyes tinted with blood. Sean sat on the bed. He touched his lips, where a fresh drop of blood rested. Joyce saw only that drop of blood. She reappeared in front of Sean. She pushed him onto the soft bed and bit his blood-stained lips. Her craving for blood reached a critical point. Thirst dominated her mind. Her fangs pierced his lips, and her primitive instincts suppressed her reason. She sucked the rich blood greedily. An urgent knock sounded on the door, but Nether noticed the sound. Her movements turned rough. Sean frowned and held her chin. He lifted her away from his lips. Slow down. His words brought a trace of clarity to Joyce. She distanced herself in horror. I am sorry. Her voice was frantic. She did not know how she did such a thing. Leave. It does not matter. The blood in front of her remained tempting. Joyce struggled with herself. With her last trace of reason, she whispered, turn me into a cat. Sean touched her chin. Are you really going to resist my blood? The provocation upset Joyce. She had endured for so many days only to fail. Her mind eroded by the lust for blood, Joyce held up her arms to distance herself. Sean slid his fingers into her hair and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her lips again. Chapter 19. Joyce stood rooted to her spot. It never occurred to her that Sean would suddenly kiss her. It was not a kiss on her forehead like when she was a kitty, nor was it any other type of kiss that he could excuse away with a mumble. It was a real kiss. Surprise flashed through Joyce's eyes, then the bloody, deep kiss swept away her last trace of reason. She followed her instinct and greedily sucked the dessert offered to her. Blood collided and flowed between their lips. It erupted like a volcano, spewing burning hot air in the room from the natural response to each other that had been carefully suppressed for a long time. The knock on the door continued, but they did not hear it. Joyce pressed Sean down and gnawed at his thin lips. It was hard to guess whether she was kissing him or tasting the sweetness of his blood. These actions made him aware of a hint of danger. Sean got up little by little and shifted to sit against the headboard of the bed, which was engraved with exquisite carvings. His eyes were very dark and gentle. He did not feel the pain. He reached out and rubbed her head. Joyce propped her arms next to him and chased him as he leaned back. But things went beyond his original intention. As they changed positions, blood dripped down the corners of his lips. The gluttonous little vampire stopped, and her fixated eyes followed the blood rolling down his chin to his collar, which exposed his collarbone. Sean realized something was amiss. When he tried to reach out to stop her, she had already lowered her head and pressed her soft lips to the drops of blood. Her naughty tongue gently licked the blood that rolled down from his collarbone. Sean froze. It was as if an electric current had ignited from the place she had kissed, crushing his senses little by little. Joyce, he breathed. He took a deep breath and used his hands to prop himself up. He tried to push her away, but it seemed to have aroused her caution against her food being taken away. She pressed his wrists together against his stomach because he was trying to escape. She bared her fangs at him as a warning. Seeing that the prey was frozen in terror by her, Joyce lowered her head again with satisfaction. There was already a second trail of blood dripping from their tussle. She never liked inconveniences, so she reached out and tore the jacket that was in her way. Sean leaned further into the bed, and his breathing became heavier as she became more provocative. He pushed the rebellious head away from his chest and hesitated, wondering if he should push her away or turn her into a cat once and for all. Joyce seemed to anticipate his intentions and firmly held her food down again. In their deadlock, Sean did not break free. His breathing grew more unstable. He took a deep breath and looked at the insatiable vampire, who was drawing close. All of a sudden, their positions changed dramatically. At one point, Joyce had the upper hand, but before she could realize what had happened, she was turned over by him. Her eyes gradually focused amidst her confusion. She struggled, unable to break free from him. Moreover, the little tooth marks on Sean's skin under his torn jacket and shirt caught her eye. Have you had enough? Sean asked, raising an eyebrow. Joyce nodded immediately. But then she thought something was strange, so she shook her head. Sean looked down at her. His cold eyes held a look that meant he could not be refused. Then isn't it my turn now? Before Joyce fully comprehended the meaning behind his words, she saw him lean closer and kiss her blood-stained lips. Joyce reacted by dodging. Although she had returned to her senses, his blood was too tempting for her. If she accidentally hurt Sean, what would happen? But he ended up catching her evasive lips. He was like the best and most experienced hunter facing a prey he had been watching for a long time. He gently sucked, patiently and meticulously letting her succumb to him. She remained lucid but gradually lost her way in his kiss. His lips were soft. She had lost her sense of taste, but he was like the sweetest cake with cream icing. From tongue to lips, and then penetrating and swirling, the sweet taste lingered throughout her mouth. She wanted to remain clear-eyed, but now, because of her unusually aware perception of his movements, she turned red in the face. Even though she did it first just now. They were like this now, weren't they? It was a little too fast. Joyce's body stiffened. She did not know what to do with her hands, so he placed them above her head and locked them in with one hand. She looked at her wrists in shock. She was not aware of when he put them above her head, and she looked down to see him unbuttoning her shirt with his other hand. Wait a minute, Joyce struggled. But at that moment, Sean's strength somehow completely overpowered her vampire strength. I have something to say. Don't take off my clothes. And isn't this going a little too fast? Oh, Sean asked patiently. Didn't you just take off mine? Oh, she was sorry. She not only took it off but also tore it off. During their struggle, she had torn off his clothes. She made the first move to do all of that. She lay down listless and suddenly did not bother to move a finger. Sean smiled at the sight of her appearance. But there was another rapid knock at the door. The weak vampire lying on the bed caught a glimpse of the wooden door and her eyes brightened. There is a knock at the door. Don't bother with them. The vampires were unable to wait any longer. The knocks on the door were heard again, and Long Aotian's anxious voice came from outside the door. Your Highness, the princess is gone. Joyce sat up in surprise. Long Aotian sounded very anxious. It was still raining outside, so where could a delicate princess go? She had agreed to stay in the castle today, and if she did not leave on her own, she was about to jump out of bed when Sean held her down with an upset face. Where are you going? To find the princess, of course. Sean raised his eyebrow with an annoyed tone. Are you that worried that she is gone? She is the female lead, Joyce exclaimed at once. If something happens to her, won't the great demon dragon blame me? Sean did not understand what she meant by female lead, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, his face darkened. You gave her the first piece of cake, and you think the king will put the blame on you regardless of what is right and wrong. Joyce did not understand how these two completely unrelated things were connected, nor did she know the origin of Sean's baffling words today. She thought that maybe it was because she had said something bad about the great demon dragon, and that she had touched a sore spot for the knight, who had been brainwashed to give the male lead the limelight, for a long time. Even if the great His Majesty is very perceptive, we can't let anything happen to the princess on our land, she whispered. She saw Sean's expression clear up a bit. I'll check what is going on. I'll be right back. Wait for me here. With that, she blushed and left another kiss on Sean's lips. She ran out of the room as quickly as a thief. Sean sat on the edge of the bed. He pensively raised his hand and caressed the warm spot on his lips. Long Aotian was waiting outside the door with several flustered maids from the castle. When one of the maids saw that she had finally opened the door, she swiftly said, Your Highness, we have searched all over the castle, but there is no sign of the princess. When did she disappear? Joyce asked cautiously. We had just gone to deliver her a nightdress when we realized she was missing, the maid said. The window of her room is open. The curtains and carpet are wet. Joyce frowned slightly. Only the curtains and carpet are wet from the rain. The maid was surprised. She did not know why Joyce had suddenly asked this. She quickly recollected the state of the room. She nodded and replied, Yes. I see. I'll go to her room and have a look. Joyce nodded and swiftly followed Long Aotian to Princess Isabella's room. She had not gone far when she suddenly stopped and looked back. Go and give the little knight some new clothes. Several maids were shocked to hear those words. They took a look at Sean, who was sitting on the bed in the room. The group of maids blushed. They hid their eyes and jokingly said, Seriously, why doesn't Her Highness Joyce know how to be gentle? She is so excited every time. Joyce slipped and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Long Aotian was beside her and grabbed her in time. Thank you, Joyce said, looking up to see the frustrated and slightly disgusted look on Long Aotian's face. Am I being despised by the moronic villain again? They arrived at Princess Isabella's room. The window was not closed because the maids had left in a hurry. The curtains were drenched from the windy, rainy night, as was the carpet under the window. Joyce saw a grim Long Aotian go to the window. It was rare that he was so nervous that he finally had a whiff of intelligence, and Joyce felt very grateful for that. But as soon as she thought of this, she saw Long Aotian looking at her solemnly. Is it because the cake you made was so bad that she ran away? Joyce put her hand to her forehead. Now I realize why the primogeniture has not appeared in 1,000 years. Long Aotian's eyes lit up. Your Highness, have you thought of a way to save the primogeniture? Forget about what I just said, Joyce said. She was extremely skeptical about his last bit of intelligence. The primogeniture has probably been laid to rest after 1,000 years, so let's figure out how to save ourselves. Joyce went up to him and said, Every floor and gate is guarded, so she must have left through the window. But the water is only near the bed, and there are no signs of the princess struggle or water over here. It means that the person who came here may be someone known to the princess. Someone she knows. Yeah, Joyce nodded and solemnly continued the analysis. In such heavy rain, the person coming from outside would need to at least step on the carpet if they wanted to forcibly take away the princess. But this area is not wet, which means... Long Aotian thought for a moment and asked solemnly, Did he dry his shoes after he jumped over the window? Joyce rubbed her temples and said, It means the princess went to the window by herself. Long Aotian thought about it, then nodded once he came to a realization. Your Highness Joyce, you are so right. Joyce refrained from complaining about this villain from the otome manga, but had another serious thought. If it is someone the princess knows, Is it possible it is from the harem? It is pretty likely that the great demon dragon came to pick her up in person. Her eyes lit up at the thought. Yes. When the great demon dragon saw that the princess came to the castle alone for the little night, he was jealous and worried. That is why he traveled all night to pick up the princess and leave with her. She clapped her hands and said happily. Then he saw how the princess was warmly received by us, and was not harmed at all, and instantly had a new understanding about us vampires. He might think that the dumb, bad villains have been influenced by beautiful princesses. After all, wherever the female lead goes, everyone will be enchanted by her. But that is not important. The important thing is that from then on, vampires and humans can work together towards peace and growth. Your Highness Joyce, what are you talking about? It doesn't matter, Joyce interrupted Long Aotin's question. Soon, we should be receiving a thank you letter from the great demon dragon. Long Aotin frowned, and was thinking about whether to interrupt her thoughts, when a vampire suddenly approached them in a hurry, and shouted disjointedly, "It is terrible. The royal family of Carnia made an announcement saying that we killed their impoverished people, and sucked their blood and kidnapped the princess. He ordered us to hand over the princess immediately, or else he would destroy our castle. So, what kind of plot is this? Why did she work so hard for so long?" Although she truthfully did not put in the effort to move the plot towards a peaceful and beautiful direction, why did it suddenly return to the original plot, where the male lead destroys the castle to save the female lead? Joyce wrapped her arms around her head, and did not have the energy to complain about this plot. She had just made so many analyses that she could not form words. I see. Long Aotin crossed his arms and made a serious comment. So this is how the great demon dragon goes back on his words. While he saved the princess, he took advantage of this opportunity to purge us in the name of saving the princess. Joyce stopped struggling to hold her head. She suddenly felt that Long Aotin had a point. Yes, the great demon dragon, that cunning dog, must have wanted to destroy all vampires early on, but he did not have a good reason to send his army. Now that the deaths in the city had set a precedent, and the princess had come to the castle again, it gave him the excuse to send his army over. Now that the great demon dragon was temporarily hiding the princess, he could not only ensure the safety of the princess, but he could also clean up these lowly little villains by killing two birds with one stone. Sure enough, he is a ruthless scummy male lead. Long Aotin saw that Joyce's head was down the entire time, and she said nothing. He cautiously said, "Your Highness Joyce, we will all swear to protect you and the castle to the death. If worse comes to worst, we will have a fight to the death with that great demon dragon." No need. Joyce suddenly came back to her senses. "I think we need to change our strategy. No matter what your decision, we will follow you to our death." "Okay," Joyce announced. "In that case, I declare that we are dissolved on the spot. Each person on their own should blend into the crowd. It is important to stay alive. Let us lay low for now, and we will gather here again when this is over. You should not think of this as an escape. It is only a strategy. The enemy advances and we retreat. Didn't you just say that no matter what I decide, you will follow me to your death?" Long Aotin thought for a moment and said, "Yes, but..." "Then there are no buts," Joyce said firmly. The speed of the otome manga's male lead was nothing to bluff about. After the great demon dragon had sent the princess back to the palace, he would probably bring his people to kill and overturn their castle. A murderous night on such a rainy night. Were they, weak, pathetic, helpless, starving, cold vampires, going to be the stepping stones for the male and female leads' love? "Wait a minute, my little knight is still in the room. Go and pack up your things. We will retreat strategically. Remember to give everyone the secret code." As she said this, she quickly ran out of the room. However, she took 2 steps before being pulled back by Long Aotin. Long Aotin frowned, as if he was choosing between a fierce struggle or to compromise. "What is the code?" Joyce was annoyed that he would ask her such a simple question. She was in a hurry to find the little knight, so she said without thinking, "So melon, and you get melon, so beans and you get beans." Joyce quickly waved her hand and rushed to the room. Sean Wee. But when she pushed the door open to the room, there was not a soul in sight. There were only the curtains being blown by the cold wind. Raindrops rolled down the window frame, and the carpet under the window had subtle water stains. With a cool chill in the earthy air, it announced that the man in the room had just pushed the windows open a second ago. The room was absolutely empty, and her unfinished words disappeared into the rain in the middle of the night. She hurried to the window, where there was only endless downpour and heavy black clouds. The sound of urgent footsteps came closer, and finally stopped outside the door. The vampire ran out of breath and said with fright, "Your Highness Joyce." The man that Carnia sent to declare war said. When he saw that Joyce did not answer, he hesitated as if he did not know how to speak, and said urgently, "They said, there has never been a knight called Sean. Sean is." He clenched his teeth and shouted, "Sean is their king." Joyce stood by the window, and did not react for a long time. Chapter 20. Have you heard? A passerby leaned in to whisper to his companion. Whispers rippled through the streets about recent events. "You mean how His Majesty is personally leading the troops to attack the vampire castle?" An old man sighed. "It is a pity that it will be too late. People say that by the time His Majesty gets there, the whole castle will be empty. Let those vampires escape. Where else can they escape? Children should not venture out at night. In addition to the children, every house has locked doors and windows." "But how did I hear that?" A man scratched his head. "His Majesty stopped the people who were going to the vampire castle." "No way." His companion scoffed. His Majesty will never be lenient to those disgusting vampires. Every vampire is still wanted all over the city. It is time for you to eat something. Long Aotian stood outside the door. He frowned and looked at the girl lying by the window. Joyce stared at the table. Without raising her head, she asked wearily, "How are things? No one has discovered it yet, right?" "No," Long Aotian replied. "I have taken over for you, and everyone is safe as of now. We will lie low for the time being. Your Highness Joyce, you have been wronged. If you need anything, please let me know." The room was old and extremely small. It had a faint mildew smell. Long Aotian frowned again and put the prepared blood bag on the table. "Your Highness Joyce, if you stop drinking blood, your body will not be able to endure." Joyce frowned slightly, but did not raise her eyes. She shook her head. Seeing her so disheartened, Long Aotian sighed. "This blood really cannot be kept in plain view on the table, but you should drink a bit." Joyce did not seem to hear him. She leaned over the table and murmured, "How can he be the male lead? He is a knight. How can he be the great demon dragon? If he is the great demon dragon, then from the very beginning, he went to pick up the princess in person. Did they fall in love on their journey? Now that the princess came back to save him, he is once again attracted to the female lead." The more Joyce thought about it, the more she felt that it was like this. But what about her? They were doing such intimate things back then, and she thought that Sean liked her. But why was Sean the king? Why did he say he was a knight? "Your Highness Joyce, you cannot keep doing this, or else." Long Aotian considered for a moment as if he had made up his mind. He rolled up his sleeve and put out his arm with a small cut in front of Joyce. "You can drink my blood." Vampire blood represented the strength and lifeline of vampires themselves. That was something Joyce had never cared about. The blood craving evoked by Long Aotian bleeding was suppressed as her frown deepened. Still immersed in a sullen world, she thought back to the time when Sean first said he was a knight. As a king, why did he pretend to be a knight? That is why one pervert king pretended to be a knight to get the princess. Won't he go back to marry the princess and have a happy ending? Then what about me? Joyce put her hand to her forehead again. "I thought I had a good relationship with the female lead, but now it seems like I have become her romantic rival. Isn't that turning me from a villain to the malicious second female lead? Impossible." Joyce shook her head and threw the strange thoughts away. "Isn't this plot too dog-blooded?" Long Aotian's face turned red then white. He paused for a while before solemnly saying, "Your Highness, this is not dog blood, this is my blood." Joyce was about to correct him on what dog-blooded meant, when there was a sudden commotion outside the cabin. They looked at each other and stopped moving. Then, they crept towards the window. "It is the royal family men, and they have brought along a black mage." Long Aotian cursed quietly. He quickly packed up everything and left the cabin with Joyce. They ran the entire way. The commotion outside the cabin was drowned out by the noise of the market. The cold iron armor made clashing sounds under the dark oppressive clouds. A man in a long black cloak walked in the middle of the soldiers. His whole face was hidden under his cloak. A black snake with red eyes sat on his shoulder. The black snake tongue flickered in the air as if it had found its prey. It slid all the way down from the man's clothes. "Found it." The black mage raised his head faintly. His voice was old and hoarse. "Follow it." At his command, a group of soldiers standing at attention followed the black snake in an orderly manner. Joyce followed Long Aotian down the alley. She looked back at the black snake slithering at top speed, chasing after them. What is that? She believed that if she left the castle and lived in seclusion, she could escape the plot, but why did the snake keep chasing them? "It is a red-eyed snake bred from the blood of the primogeniture." Long Aotian looked down at his arm that had already healed. "He can smell the blood of vampires." Joyce was shocked and looked at his arm. She did not know how a snake was raised on blood, but this primogeniture had gone too far. The primogeniture was dead for 1,000 years, and still wanted to mess up the descendants like this. Long Aotian suddenly stopped. "Your Highness Joyce, please head straight down this road." Joyce was surprised. "What are you trying to do?" "I will distract them." "No," Joyce blurted out without thinking. In a situation like this, if he were to distract those soldiers, he would basically be mincemeat. Although Long Aotian was foolish, he had been diligently following her for such a long time, so how could she let him take a huge risk to save her? As she grabbed him and continued running, she pulled out a knife. She prepared to make a nick on her hand. On second thought, she pulled Long Aotian's hand and made a small cut. Long Aotian did not understand and simply looked at her. It was clear that when his wound had healed, the red-eyed snake could only vaguely identify their location through a faint smell. Why did she inflict a wound on his hand? Joyce did not explain. She kept pulling Long Aotian to keep running. Then, she took out a small bottle in her hand and put it to the wound. The vampire self-healing ability was so strong that the wound healed in the blink of an eye. Joyce relentlessly made a new cut. She repeated the process until the bottle was completely filled. Then, she carefully dried the blood on Long Aotian's wrist. Suddenly, she had a slight reaction. This blood aroused her longing for blood again, but she shook her head to shake off the thoughts and the restlessness. Now was not the time to think about that. But the smell of this blood, it smells a little familiar. It is like it is from the market and the farm. Keep running along this road. There is an old church at the end. Hide there and wait for me. As Long Aotian looked at the bottle of blood in her hand, he finally understood what she wanted to do. "Your Highness, let me do it. Wait for me at the church." Joyce swiftly pushed him away and ran to the other side of the fork. 9 times out of 10, a low IQ villain like Long Aotian would receive a dramatic death ending if she were to let him do it. Although she did not want to die, it was way better to have her lead the snake away than to let Long Aotian do it. Joyce clenched her teeth and rushed through the dark alley. She carefully distanced herself from the snake and looked around at the surrounding terrain. Her eyes were drawn to a figure in the dense forest outside the alley. As the red-eyed snake chased the scent of blood, the black mage followed it with the heavily armed royal knights. The red-eyed snake seemed to have found something. It hissed violently and slid out of the alley. It went down a dense forest where the fog was stretched out everywhere. Once the black mage knew a vampire was near, his eyes hidden under his robe lit up. He quickly ordered everyone to follow and ran to the dense forest. Behind them, a figure hiding in the corner of the alley slowly looked out. Just running around in a frenzy had used up her strength. She was extremely exhausted again. Once she saw that group of people leave, she breathed a sigh of relief. She was going to find Long Aotian, but just when she turned around, she almost bumped into someone who appeared out of nowhere behind her. Startled, Joyce stepped back. The man clenched her arm. The man was also wearing a long black cloak. It terrified her at first glance. She looked up and saw a familiar face. S.E. She did not finish his name, because she remembered who the person in front of her was. For a moment, she did not know how to address him. She did not make another sound for a while. Sean pulled her back into the alley. His eyes glanced over the group of figures that had disappeared into the woods. He then turned back to her. What is it? Do you not recognize me? Your Majesty, my lord. I have no ill intentions towards the princess. Joyce withdrew her hand awkwardly. We will definitely stay away from you in the future, and we will never appear in front of you again. Sean's eyes glanced over the hand she had withdrawn. His complexion was anything but good. Joyce took another step back and looked back at the dense forest behind her. If Sean shouted now, the people she had tricked would arrive as soon as possible. Even though we are vampires, we really have not done anything. Joyce cleared her throat awkwardly and wanted to leave quickly. We have given up our evil ways, so we will not do anything bad in the future. Can you just act like you have not seen me? Sean's face darkened. He was about to say something when a bird flew out of the dense forest behind them. It screeched as if it were notifying the leading black mage. Joyce was startled. She knew that she must have been discovered. She turned around to run, but she did not even take 2 steps before Sean grabbed her. He looked upset. Where are you going? Joyce could not tell which side Sean was on and was anxious to leave. She took Sean's hand and ran like crazy, but their pursuers went around them, and after a while, they were surrounded. Joyce saw that there was nowhere to run. She put Sean behind her. Leave quickly. But as soon as she said this, she realized that these pursuers were not Sean men. For a moment, she suddenly felt that her words from before were particularly embarrassing in this present situation. Where else can you escape to now? I did not do anything bad. What are you trying to capture me for? After the knights surrounded them, the man in the black cloak slowly walked out from behind them. The red-eyed snake was perched on his shoulder, hissing. The greed in those crimson eyes flashed unabashedly at Joyce, who was right in the middle. His Majesty ordered that all vampires are to be killed on the spot. He looked keenly at the girl in front of him, his eyes hidden under his black cloak. Without listening to any excuses from Joyce, he ordered them to take her down. The red-eyed snake was unable to hold back and slid off his shoulder. It quickly went along the paved road in the alley towards Joyce. The red-eyed snake opened its mouth. Joyce gasped. Even though she was now a vampire, and a high-ranking one at that, she was so scared that she could not even speak. She was simply afraid of this long and slippery thing. She was trying to figure out how to get rid of the red-eyed snake that was coming straight at her, when she was suddenly pulled back by the man behind her. Ice thorns pierced out of the ground one after another to block the red-eyed snake and the armored knights for a brief period of time. Sean pulled Joyce and quickly escaped from them. They managed to escape their pursuers. Joyce's breathing was a little unstable. She looked around to figure out the direction of the church using her memory. What are you looking for? Sean's voice came from behind her. Joyce hesitated. Your Majesty, you are a busy man. You do not have to follow me. I am not busy. Sean looked around and caught a glimpse of the old church in the narrow alley. He turned to look at Joyce. Who else did you mean when you said we? What do you mean we? Who are you running far away with? Sean raised an eyebrow. Is it Long Aotian? Under his dangerous gaze, Joyce retreated step by step until she was against the wall. Your Majesty, your men have been chasing us for a long time. You cannot keep wasting your time on us. We are useless villains. Joyce looked at him while breathing heavily. Having run for a long time, she was inevitably a little exhausted. As for Long Aotian, he will not harm you at all. I will keep an eye on him, and will not let him touch the princess in the future. She stopped looking at him and wanted to go straight past him. Your Majesty? Sean narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly heard something. He turned to the church close by. Those are not my people, and now a vampire seems to be in danger. Joyce was surprised. She followed Sean's eyes. Long Aotian. She said nothing more, and the two quickly ran in the direction of the church. Inside the old church, Long Aotian, who was surrounded by the knights, was on the verge of dying. The red-eyed snake climbed up along his body, opened its bloody mouth, and bit at his neck. It was the first thing Joyce saw when she arrived. She froze at the terrifying sight in front of her. Her gaze was fixed on the neck that had been bitten by the snake. Snakes ate their prey by swallowing them whole, so why did the red-eyed snake in front of her not look like a snake, but rather like a vampire sucking on blood? At that moment, the black-cloaked man standing in the middle of everyone looked like he was enjoying what was happening. It was as if what the snake had sucked was being delivered to his taste buds. Something flashed through Joyce's mind. If those victims looked like they were sucked dry by vampires, and were maliciously transformed into vampires, then their blood was being transformed into vampire blood before they completely transformed into a vampire. Like this, they could not only cover up their goal and a large number of vampire deaths, but also shift all the blame onto the vampires. Joyce suddenly came back to reality and looked at Long Aotin, whose blood was being sucked. He was staring in her direction, but his eyes moved away hastily as if he were afraid of being discovered by the black mage. He raised his trembling fingers slightly and motioned for her to run away quickly. It was like he had given up on his life. He slowly closed his eyes. Joyce wanted to run away. She just wanted to save herself and find a place that no one could find and stay far away from the male and female leads. But this low IQ vampire was so foolish that every day, like a broken record, he nagged her about how they needed to kidnap the princess and save the primogeniture, all while holding a haughty, self-important expression all day. Yet, he secretly wanted to raise a cat when no one was looking. He was a villain who was not very good at using his brains, and was completely used as a plot device for the story. He cut his wrist for her when she had no appetite to drink blood, and he also tried to distract the pursuers away from her when they were in danger. Joyce struggled, but then made a decision and stepped forward. Wait a minute. Sean grabbed her and whispered, I cannot wait. Joyce's eyes were on Long Aotin, who was already pale, his eyes closed. With hesitation, she made a dash towards the black snake. Joyce quickly jumped on the red-eyed snake and pulled it away from Long Aotin. Her movements were done in one swift motion, but the cold and slippery feeling of her hands still made her feel a chill in the deepest part of her heart. The red-eyed snake was caught off guard. It released its mouth because of her attack. The moment it realized what had happened, it pounced on her with its mouth wide open like an aggressive predator. Joyce gasped sharply. The courage she had just now when she attacked the snake vanished, without a drop left. She became preoccupied with avoiding the red-eyed snake attacks, but as soon as she avoided it, the armed knights pointed their swords at her, and the black mage, whose plans were disturbed by her, angrily directed his dark mist in her direction. This kind of attack from both fronts made it difficult for Joyce to hold them off. As soon as she avoided the red-eyed snake attacks, she saw the black mist and cold iron blade coming at her. She closed her eyes in terror, feeling like she was about to meet her end. Suddenly, a strong wind burst forth, breaking through the black mist and knocking down the red-eyed snake beside her. Joyce opened her eyes in confusion. She could only see a huge dragon that covered up the skies in front of her. He used his tail to sweep away those fierce knights and simultaneously fended them off. With a roar, the black mist coming at her dispersed in an instant. The head of the dragon was slightly lowered, because the church ceiling was not very high. The intense gust lifted the black mage cloak, revealing a wrinkly and shocked face under the black hood. And unexpectedly, the folds of one eye and the forehead of this face fell off like a snake shedding skin. It looked strange and frightening. You should stop. Sean's voice carried a familiar calmness. He looked at the gigantic dragon in front of him. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes, but then he regained his composure. Your Majesty, I am your most dedicated subordinate. Behind you are some heinous vampires. Please give them to me. Joyce immediately realized that this man was probably the biggest villain in the plot, who had been lurking around Sean for many years and might even be favored by him. She swiftly interrupted him. This man is obviously the big villain boss. When he sucks up the power of the vampires, he will be unstoppable. Sean, who had turned into a dragon, could not understand her strange words and only whispered, I am not that old to the point where I cannot tell what is going on. In a flash, the black mage eyes suddenly became vicious, and his sinister side was revealed. Do you really think that you alone can win against me right now? As he spoke, a dark mist emerged and started surrounding them. The red-eyed snake, which had been knocked to the side, began to wriggle in pain. Gradually, it increased several times in size into a pitch-black python. Get on. The dragon lowered his head and told Joyce, who was looking for a place to hide. Joyce scrambled to climb up his back with a weak Long Aotin. The dragon back gave a different feeling from that of the snake, but the hard, cold scales still made her feel tingly. It is a good thing Sean is a Western and not an Eastern dragon. Otherwise, he and the snake would really have something in. As if sensing her dislike, the dragon looked back at her with annoyance. At that moment, Joyce withdrew her gaze and waited to see the male lead fight the monster. But should not someone like her, who gets in the way, go into hiding at a time like this and not make a mess for the male lead? Did not riding on the male lead back at this time affect how he would fight the boss? Joyce was thinking things over when she saw Sean, who had transformed into a dragon, flap his wings and rise into the air with a burst of wind. He crashed through the church ceiling and quickly flew away. Joyce looked back in shock at the python relentlessly chasing them on land, and then at Sean. She asked with hesitation, Are we making a strategic retreat? Because a fight cannot be carried out here? Sean replied calmly, I cannot beat it. Aren't you the male lead? How can you not beat it? Joyce exclaimed in shock. Is it because the female lead is not here? Where are we going now? Are we looking for the female lead? Isabella? Sean frowned once he heard her. Then he asked in an upset tone, What do you want to look for her for? Joyce did not want to fight with him over this. After all, this question always brought forth some unpleasant thoughts. Where are we going? We are waiting for reinforcements. We have reinforcements? As soon as Sean replied, a blazing fire streaked through the skies, zigzagging straight towards the python with a howl. Joyce's eyes lit up. Reinforcements are here. But as soon as she said that, the fire brushed past Sean's dragon tail and collided with one side of the abandoned church. The petite girl stood on the top corner of the other side of the building and smiled awkwardly. Sorry, it is my first time practicing it. Joyce, Sean, and Long Aotin remained silent. The teenager sitting next to the girl pulled her cheek and looked indifferently at the frightened vampires and python, who were completely unaware of whether these two were enemies or friends. He said with a soft chuckle, Aretha is amazing. She has done so well for her first time. Try again. Joyce, Sean, and Long Aotin remained silent. Joyce felt that this person was a nutjob. Aren't they fighting the biggest boss right now? Why are these two reinforcements so careless? Why did it seem like they are not dealing with a superior level boss, but a small soldier who they can easily attack? Okay. Aretha face flushed with a touch of embarrassment. She quickly chanted the spell again and got into a fight with the python. Aretha was probably a little nervous because it was her first combat, and a few moves failed to do any real damage to the python. Joyce looked at how weak she looked and rubbed her temples. God of Light, is a boss at this level really meant for the first lesson in magic training? No. Casinio looked at Aretha's cautious movements. His eyes carried a soft happiness. I am not an instructor now. I am just a weak academy student who needs to be protected. Joyce, Sean, and Long Aotin remained silent. She knew it. She should not have expected anything from this damn otome manga. While they were talking, Aretha, a beginner in magic, was gradually defeated by the python. Although she avoided most of its attacks, she was still knocked away by the python tail whip. With amusement in his eyes, Casinio jumped up and caught the girl who was falling down in the air. The game is over. As he spoke, he put Aretha to one side and leapt toward the python that was opening its mouth. Seeing this, Sean let Joyce and Long Aotin down and joined the fight with him. They soon subdued the python and the black mage. Once Joyce saw that there was a definite conclusion, she supported the frail Long Aotin up. She said goodbye to Aretha and left. Are we leaving like this? Long Aotin asked, perplexed. Yeah. Joyce replied without a second thought. It is finished now, so let us go home to the farm. But do you not have anything to say to Sean? Joyce paused. No, but I do. The familiar voice behind Joyce made her freeze. Long Aotin limped away, giving them space. Joyce thought for a moment, then looked back calmly at the person behind her. Your Majesty should know that these things had nothing to do with the vampires. Then can we move back to the castle? Sean nodded then shook his head. Joyce was confused. My queen, it would be better to come back to the palace with me. Joyce did not expect him to say this. Her face turned completely red. What queen? Who is your queen? She looked away. Your queen is Princess Isabella. It is you. Princess Isabella likes you. She is the female lead. You should. You still have not explained what a male lead and a female lead is. Why do you think I should like her? And Sean frowned as he continued. Why do you think Princess Isabella likes me? She has been sent back to Sedan. What? Joyce's eyes widened. Sean said coldly. I am thinking of sending Long Aotin with her. That way, there will be no one else. It will just be the two of us, my queen. What queen? Joyce blushed and retorted angrily. I have not forgiven you, nor have I agreed to be your queen. Sean bit the tip of his finger and whispered something to make things more difficult. But that is not what you said that day, when you were very passionate. Joyce's face was so red that she was about to explode. She was about to block Sean's mouth. But then she saw an attractive drop of blood on his lip. Now she was on the verge of collapsing. Joyce clenched her teeth and put one hand to the wall. She tried to control her steps, but her body honestly gravitated towards him. She looked bashfully at Sean, who was looking back at her in place before turning away stubbornly as her mind gradually fell apart. Did she really have such a weak willpower? Was she really addicted to beauty and blood? It was clear that she was resisting. But Sean took a step closer and gently held her cheek. I have said before, there is a price for drinking my blood. What price? His voice was low and slow, exuding a tenderness unlike the past. If you drink dragon blood, you will become the bride of the dragon. Saying so, he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Why are you so strange today? Joyce looked at him suspiciously. The more she looked at him, the more she felt that something was wrong. Sean's complexion changed and he awkwardly said. Casinio said. What did he say? When you coax a girl when she is angry. Casinio's eyes had a light smile in them. Do not be ashamed. Extra chapter. It is all your fault. Joyce glared at the empty space where her meticulously prepared afternoon tea should have been. I have afternoon tea with Aretha and Isabella today, and it is almost time. How can I be a host to my guests when you have eaten all my cakes? Sean glanced at the plate. It was so empty that not even a crumb remained. He tossed the last piece of cake into his mouth and looked back at her with satisfaction. I have informed them that the afternoon tea has been cancelled. Joyce threw a side pillow at him. Eat, eat, eat. You are a dragon, not a pig. Are you full? Do you want me to make you some more? Sean firmly caught the pillow. His eyes crinkled with a smile. He took her into his arms and whispered in a low voice. I am not full yet. As if to prove his words, his thin lips grazed her earlobe. His fingertips gently undid the cute little apron that was as pink as the cake. His breath tickled the sensitive skin near her ear. Joyce felt her earlobe turn burning red. She pushed him away. I am angry right now. Sean slid his hand down her dress. It was easy to find where she was sensitive. I am coaxing you. Joyce felt a mix of shyness and anger. She turned her head and bit his shoulder in retaliation. Sean seemed accustomed to the nip. He let her bite him while his rapid fingers peeled off the dress that was as pure and sweet as the cake. He picked her up and placed her next to the cake stand. Joyce tasted a bit of sweet blood. Her eyes turned red. She felt that Sean had become accustomed to her blood-sucking behavior. She felt dissatisfied with his perfunctory appearance and took a firm bite on his shoulder. Sean sucked in a cold breath. He let out a low chuckle and looked at the vengeful girl. "Are you full?" Joyce only moaned and said nothing. Sean kissed her nose that smelled slightly like cream and then reached her lips. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Then is it my turn?" Joyce blushed at his words. She looked into the playful eyes before her. Dissatisfied, she turned him around and held him to where she was just sitting. She moved in one fell swoop. She looked down at the person who raised an eyebrow and looked at her calmly. "Little knight, since you ate all my desserts, shouldn't you make up for it?" Sean laid down along the table and looked at her with a smile. "You can taste it." Joyce saw that he wanted more. He regarded her flirting as a service to scratch the itch. She used her fingers to tickle him through his clothes just like he used to do. His body tensed up. She felt like a child who had found an interesting toy. She moved in circles around his ticklish spots. The game slowly exhausted his patience. Finally, Sean looked at her and grabbed her hands. His eyes were dark. Joyce felt that she had finally made a comeback. She took a closer look at the beautiful and delicious person in front of her. She found it a little difficult to control herself. She unbuttoned his clothes. Her breathing turned haggard and unsteady. She acted like a queen inspecting her territory. Her hands moved down and explored. Right at that moment, Isabella's voice sounded outside the door. "Joyce, I heard that you cancelled your afternoon tea because you were not feeling well. Are you all right? Aretha and I have come to see you." Sean and Joyce froze. Later on, Joyce sat with Aretha. "I think Casinio seems to be interested in magic for turning a human into a cat. Did he use it on you?" Aretha blushed crimson. "Oh, of course not. But then, he found out that I liked furry things and always turned me into something strange." The end.